Mushoku Tensei Vol15 by Rifujin Namaganote, cast by Artale Studio. If you are interested in creating your own audio drama like this, please visit artale.ai and use promotion code ARTALE to activate your account. Now, enjoy the story. We all suffer our defeats, but life goes on. There's no shame in losing, or groveling for that matter. Ethor, Rudeus, Grey Rat. Translation, Jane R.F. Maggot. Chapter 1, The Diary, Part 1. It was the morning after my encounter with the man who claimed to be my future self, and I hadn't slept a wink. My mind wasn't working too well at this point, of course, but I needed to decide what to do. My future self had given me a few pieces of advice. Consult Nanahoshi, write Eris a letter, and doubt the man God without opposing him. I'd written the letter to Eris last night, but I wasn't going to send it until I'd talked things over with Sylphie and Roxy. Depending on how that conversation went, I might need to revise it significantly. The thing about the man God sounded fine to me. The next time he popped into my dreams, I'd let him know exactly where things stood between us. As for talking to Nanahoshi, I was tempted to go see her right away, but how was I supposed to explain the situation? The whole thing was insane. Then again, Nanahoshi had been summoned here from a parallel world. My story might sound nuts, but she probably wouldn't just laugh it off. First things first, though, I needed to review the diary, the one my future self had brought back with him. I had no idea what that book contained, and honestly, I was scared to find out. But I couldn't just shove it in a drawer and forget about it. It was the only record of what that desperate old man had seen and done. The diary was weathered and worn, its cover was scarred, and the first pages were yellowed with age. Still, the words were at least comprehensible. Bracing myself, I began to read. I've decided to start keeping a diary. It's been an eventful couple of weeks, you know? I met Rudeus and got a few hints about Zenith's condition, and I'll be learning more about summoning magic and teleportation soon. There's a lot I need to deal with, so I figure I'll try writing stuff down to help keep track of it all. Aisha was pretty down this morning. She found some weird mouse dead, I guess. Maybe she's not a fan of rodents. Apparently, someone found a cat with petrification syndrome in the neighborhood. Scary stuff. I'll have to remind my family to wash their hands and rinse their mouths carefully. We just found out Elenilis is pregnant. Cliff looked incredibly nervous, but Elenilis had a big smile on her face. We threw them a celebration, of course. You've got to appreciate the good times while they're here. In the beginning, at least, it read like a relatively mundane journal. One entry described studying summoning magic with Rudeus. Another mentioned wandering around the floating fortress with Zenoba, looking at all the works of art. There were also plenty of side notes like, I found a new way to make Roxy squeal last night, or Lucy looks like an angel when she's asleep. I bet she'll be a beauty when she grows up. It was the diary of someone who was clearly enjoying his life. The first few entries were dated, but he'd quickly stopped bothering. That made it impossible to tell exactly how much time had passed. Judging from the old man's story, though, I was probably about 2 weeks into the future at this point. And that was where things took a sharp turn for the worse. Roxy collapsed today. She hadn't been feeling well for a while, but now she's developed a fever. I'll have to tell the university she won't be coming into work for a while. I've tried everything up to and including advanced detoxification magic, but it had no effect whatsoever. I'm worried it might be something serious. I'll ask Cliff to take a look at her as soon as possible. The tips of Roxy's toes are turning into some kind of purple crystal. I called Cliff over right away to take a look with his eye of identification. Apparently, she's got something called petrification syndrome. It's a horrible disease that can only be cured with a god-tier detoxification spell. We're going to use the teleportation circles to visit Millis and get the incantation for the spell we need. Cliff and Zenoba are coming along with me. Sylphie wanted to go as well, but I asked her to hold down the fort here. Well, we've made it to Milishan. Apparently, the church keeps the god-tier incantations stored deep inside the cathedral here. Cliff knows where they are, but the place is off limits to everyone under the rank of archbishop. We're planning to break in during the night. Once we get the incantation copied down, we can just sneak back out again. We managed the break-in part just fine, but we didn't count on the incantation being a book as thick as a dictionary. It was impossible to copy the entire thing on the spot. We had to steal it, and then they spotted us on our way out. We're on the run right now. We walked into an ambush at the teleportation circle. The circle itself was damaged as we fought, It's no longer usable. Cliff was poisoned during the fight. He's unconscious, and it looks serious. I killed a human being for the first time. I can still hear the crunch. Makes me sick to my stomach. Damn it! Damn it! We're making our way to another teleportation circle. Cliff's still unconscious, and it seems like they've circulated our names and descriptions all around the country. We're wanted criminals now. I've made an enemy of the Millish Church for life. Cliff died today. I don't want to write anything for a while. We managed to make it to another teleportation circle somehow. This nightmare's almost over. We were too late. I can't write anything today. I think I need to write down what happened yesterday. We ran into Eris and Ghislaine at the entrance to the city. Eris started yapping at me, but I told her I had 2 wives and a family and no time to babysit her anymore. She wandered off, looking stunned. Ghislaine shot me a look of contempt before she left. Really pissed me off. When I made it back to the house, I found everyone looking miserable. Roxy was dead. Half her body had turned to crystal by the end. The whole trip to Millis ended up being pointless. I told Elenilis about Cliff's death. She slapped me in the face and ran off crying. I can't stand this. It's too much. We held a funeral for Roxy. I can barely get myself out of bed right now. All I do is cry. I don't give a shit about anything. Seems like Elenilis left town without telling anybody. Not sure a pregnant woman should be wandering around on her own, but that's her business, I guess. Sylphie keeps trying to cheer me up. It's not working. Roxy's never coming back. She was so sweet, so earnest. She was the one who brought me out of that house. She was the one who comforted me when Paul died. She was my compass for all these years, and now she's gone. I've been doing nothing but getting drunk lately. When I'm sober, I remember Roxy. And then I start sobbing. Sylphie keeps saying I can't go on like this, but what does she know? I've lost the woman who taught me everything. Lilia started nagging me when I drink in the house, so I'm getting drunk in taverns instead. Sometimes Eris shows up to harass me when I'm drinking. She usually yells a bunch of insults, then takes a swing at me. What is that woman's problem? And why doesn't Ghislaine stop her? Norn isn't speaking to me these days either. She just looks at me like I'm a piece of trash. Nobody understands how I feel. Lately, Sylphie's been coming on to me aggressively, keeps asking me to sleep with her and try to forget about Roxy. She was so persistent I ended up yelling at her. Why would she say something so thoughtless? Why would she think it would work? It's not just that, I guess. If I slept with Sylphie right now, I'd probably be really rough with her. I'd treat her as a stand-in for Roxy, and I'd take out all my pain and anger on her. That can't be the right thing to do. I screwed up. Some prostitute started flirting with me in the tavern. I was drunk as hell and ended up taking her to a room upstairs. She was great in bed, of course, a real pro. But I guess all the women I've slept with so far now didn't have that much experience, really. Okay, that's not the important part. When I staggered into the house smelling like another woman, Sylphie burst into tears. She asked me, "Am I not good enough for you?" and then locked herself in her room. Before I could say anything, Lilia gave me a real talking to, and even Aisha scowled at me. I can still hear Sylphie sobbing in her room. She won't answer when I knock. I had it all wrong. She was willing to endure anything. She wanted me to throw my pain at her. Tomorrow, I'm going to apologize. Sylphie still won't speak to me. What am I supposed to do? God, if only Ellen Elias was here. Sylphie's disappeared. When I woke up this morning, I found her room empty. Well, almost empty. She left behind the clothes and other gifts I bought her over the years. Lilia ordered me to track her down right away, but I don't know if I even have the right. Sylphie has every reason in the world to divorce me. As I was sitting around trying to decide what to do, Zenith walked up and slapped me in the face. She didn't say anything, just slapped me over and over again. I guess she was telling me to get my act together. I decided to chase Sylphie down. From what I found out by asking around town, it sounds like she left for the kingdom of Asura with Ariel and her allies. There are still a few months until Ariel's graduation. Why rush back now? I didn't get a satisfactory answer, but I'm guessing something happened in Asura. I'll have to move quickly myself. I ran into Eris again. Crazy girl started blathering about how she was going to give me one last chance or something, and when I inevitably brushed her off, she started punching me. I was getting pretty sick of her crap, so I knocked her away with magic. Then she drew her sword and came after me, so I ran for it. What is her problem, anyway? She dumped me years ago. Walked into a blizzard. Have to wait for it to die down. Did Sylphie already make it past this area? I'm feeling more anxious by the day. Today I made it to the kingdom of Asura, but they stopped me at the border. Since I'm an enemy of the Millie's church, I'm apparently considered a wanted criminal in Asura as well. I had to make a run for it before they arrested me. I'll need to find some way to sneak across the border. Managed to make a deal with a local thieves guild. It's a good thing organized crime is so pervasive around here. Apparently I'm something of a celebrity to the robbers of the world. I saw envy in the way they looked at me. Word got around about my theft of that incantation from the holy country, I guess. I explained the situation, and they agreed to have a bandit named Triss accompany me across the border. She's a pretty voluptuous woman. I'm worried Sylphie might get the wrong idea if she sees us together. I made it inside the kingdom of Asura. The guild had me disguise myself with a mask and hood. As of today, my name is Ludo Ronuma. Conveniently enough, I'm suffering from a curse that will petrify me if anyone sees my face. This Ronuma character is supposed to be a magician from Basharan who's come to Asura for work, traveling with his cousin Triss as a guide. The guild really put some thought into all of this. I've got to hand it to them. From what we're hearing in the taverns, the king of Asura is on his deathbed. Rumor also has it that the royal princes are fighting it out for the right to succeed him. That would explain why Ariel rushed back here ahead of schedule. We'll reach the capital soon. Unfortunately, the only news we're hearing about Ariel seems pretty dubious. People seem to think she's gathering her forces to launch some kind of coup d'etat. Nobody thinks she has any chance of pulling it off, though. Ariel's not stupid enough to start a fight she can't win. It's just a rumor. We made it to ours today. Triss spotted Eris in a tavern while gathering information. Did the girl follow me all this way? No, that can't be it. Asura was her homeland, right? We probably just ended up in the same city by coincidence. Ariel's gone underground from the sound of things. And of course, Luke and Sylphie went with her. I'm not sure where to start looking for them. We can't find them. Triss seems to think they already left the capital, but who knows where they headed? The only thing that comes to mind is, well, maybe Ariel's joining forces with Luke's family or something. Tomorrow morning, I'll suggest we head for the region ruled by the Natos Grey Rats. We've made our way to the Milbots region, where Pylemon Notos Grey Rat rules. On our way here, we heard a rumor that Ariel's hiding out under the Notos family's protection at the moment. Now I have to figure out how I get to Sylphie. I feel like it might involve more breaking and entering. For some reason, Eris was waiting for me when I tried to break into the Notos estate. She beat me up pretty good. After they locked me in the basement, that Pylemon guy showed up and verbally abused me for a while. The man's face looks a lot like Paul's, but that's where the resemblance ends. He seemed to be under the impression that I'd come to seize control of the Notos family. After announcing that he'd execute me tomorrow and send my head to the Millie's church, he stalked out of the room. I managed to escape easily enough, but Ariel was nowhere to be found. They've launched a coup in the capital. That rumor about Ariel fleeing to Milbots was a load of crap. They were lurking somewhere in ours, waiting for their moment to strike. I don't know if I'll make it back in time. We're about a day from the capital now. People are saying that the coup ended in failure. Ariel had recklessly attempted to simultaneously murder the first and second princes, but they were protected by two powerful sword masters, the Water God and a North Emperor, who'd been brought to the capital as royal guests. The assassination ended in failure. Ariel's forces were wiped out, and she herself had been captured. They're saying she's going to be executed soon. Her forces were wiped out, though? Wiped out? Completely? What about Sylphie? I can't take this anymore. Why is this happening? Where did everything go so wrong? I'm going to write about what happened a few days ago. The bodies of Ariel's co-conspirators were on display in the royal palace's execution grounds. Luke was among them, and so was Sylphie. One of her arms had been cut off, and there was a huge laceration across her face. A small crowd of people were throwing stones at the corpses. They were throwing stones at Sylphie and calling her a traitor to the kingdom. Whenever they hit the bodies, the crows that were pecking at their flesh flapped noisily into the air. I couldn't control myself. I burned their bodies with magic, and then I burned everyone who tried to stop me too. The hell with this country. They all deserve to burn. I rose to my feet quickly. My heart pounded in my chest and my head was spinning. Reading that had been incredibly painful. I didn't want to continue. Did I really have to read this thing? Was there really no other choice? Herp. A wave of nausea washed over me. This was just some sick story that old man had made up, right? That had to be it. I didn't want to believe a future like this was possible. It was too horrible to even consider. No, I needed to read the whole thing. There was information in this book, valuable, crucial information. When I looked down at it again, however, I couldn't bring myself to turn the page. The thought of continuing made me sick. What new horrors would be waiting for me in the next entry? I was literally queasy with dread. Okay, I need a break. Leaving the room on unsteady legs, I headed for the bathroom, and then I vomited into the toilet. Tears ran down my face. In some sense, I'd written that diary, and I could feel, with awful clarity, exactly what I'd felt as my world collapsed around me. I could feel my grief when Roxy died. I could feel my panic and hopelessness when Sylphie left me. And I could feel my devastating pain when I found Sylphie's corpse. Blee! I shoved my face into the toilet bowl and puked until there was nothing left to puke. My stomach was completely empty now, but I had no appetite. I probably wasn't going to manage to eat anything today. After rinsing out my mouth with water, I left the bathroom. Sylphie was standing in the hall waiting for me with a worried look on her face.
Rudy? What's wrong? Are you okay?
She was wearing her casual, everyday clothes. Her silver hair was loose around her shoulders. I found myself picturing her dead, her face scarred, her arm missing, cold and lifeless, hung out for the crows.
What is it?
Without a word, I'd thrown my arms around her. Her body was as soft and warm as ever.
Are you still thinking about that battle with the Tafe?
Yeah.
Really? There. You know, Rudy, I'm always available if you need a little comforting. I know you're not half as strong as you look.
I'm always available if you need a little comforting. My future self had ignored those words, and it had cost him dearly. Yeah. Sorry, Sylphie.
It's okay.
You know, when I'm really hurting, I might mess things up. I might say stupid, mean things, instead of crying on your shoulder.
What's this? All of a sudden?
But please, don't just disappear on me.
Well, if that does happen, I think I'd get upset. I might say some harsh things too, so maybe we'd have a fight. But we can always make up, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course we can. Sylphie's so nice. How could I have ever betrayed a sweet little thing like her?
Rudy? Are you groping my backside?
You want me to stop?
I mean, I guess it's no big deal, but... Wah!
Now that I'd received her permission, I picked Sylphie up in my arms and headed for the bedroom. I wasn't planning to do anything too sexual. I just needed some private cuddling at the moment, honestly. It kind of felt like I'd just gotten back something I'd lost forever, you know? Although I hadn't really lost her yet, so... Yeah, it wasn't easy to explain even to myself. Reading that diary had put me in a sad and sentimental mood, I guess. Couldn't hurt to avail myself of a little Sylphie therapy. When Roxy came home from work, I couldn't help following her around the house. When she settled down on the couch, I sat myself right next to her and started playing with the ends of her braids.
What's the matter, Rudy?
It seemed my constant fidgeting had gotten to be too much for her. Well, I was hoping we could talk for a while.
We talk all the time, Rudy. Oh. Is there something serious we need to discuss?
No. I just wanted a little, intimate time, you know?
All right then. But we're not doing anything too physical tonight.
Sure. Yeah. I just want to, well, cuddle a little. If that's okay with you.
That's fine with me, Rudy.
With that, Roxy sat back down on my lap and leaned back against me, cupping one hand around her shoulder. I stared down at her face, now only inches from mine. That was when I realized that I had no idea what I wanted to talk about. So, how was your day?
Oh, it wasn't too eventful, really. Some mischievous student did send the principal's wig flying at one point, though.
Ooh, too bad I missed that.
Let's see. What else?
Roxy had spent her whole day at work and was clearly a bit worn out. Still, she took the time to humor me. We chatted about trivial things for a while, chuckling at each other's jokes. I did end up groping her butt a little, which earned me a slap on the hand. But when I protested that I was just trying to cuddle, Roxy sighed and allowed me to continue. Afterward, we headed into the bath together where I washed her back and massaged her shoulders. Basically, I doted on her like a son buttering up his mother's.
You seem a little needy today, Rudy. Did something bad happen?
No, not at all. I was just thinking about how very glad I am to have you safe and sound, that's all.
Is that so? Well, I did have a close scrape back in the teleportation labyrinth, I suppose. Feel free to confirm my soundness to your heart's content.
The two of us were in the bathtub now. Once again, Roxy was seated on my lap. As I gently rubbed her slender shoulders, I dropped a question of my own as casually as I could. How are you feeling, Roxy? You're not under the weather or anything, right? I'd prevented her from catching petrification syndrome by eliminating that rodent. I was quite confident of that, but I wasn't 100% sure yet. There was a chance my future self had drawn the wrong conclusions after all.
What? I'm fine. Why do you ask?
Oh, I don't know. I just really want you to live a nice long life, I guess.
Given the lifespan of my race, I'm quite likely to outlive you. I expect you to take good care of your health, mister.
You got it. When I spoke those words, Roxy's face lit up with a big smile. From the looks of things, she really was just fine. Sylphie and Roxy were still alive. Things weren't going to turn out the way they did in that diary. I wasn't going to let that happen. With that comforting thought fixed firmly in my mind, I finally felt ready to face the rest of those awful pages. It wouldn't be easy, but it had to be done. Chapter 2, The Diary, Part 2. The next morning, I reopened the diary, ready to pick up where I'd left off. However, it seemed like my future self hadn't written anything for some time after Sylphie's death. When I turned the page, I found the paper was noticeably different. It seemed like a year or two had passed, at least. Maybe more. The entries were vague enough that it could have been a decade. I had no way of knowing what happened in that undocumented period, but when the entries did resume, I was surprised by how stupid and juvenile they seemed. There was a lot of talk about women I spotted in the street and the size of their butts. One entry recounted my seduction of a waitress at a newly opened tavern. Others described my visits to various brothels, complete with reviews of their quality. The language got ugly at times. It was the diary of a scumbag. In all honesty, in one entry, I even took the time to rank all the women I'd ever slept with. It was hard to believe it was me writing these things. Was this what I'd become without Roxy and Sylphie around? In any case, I evidently spent years indulging in this lifestyle. It wasn't clear where these events happened, but I recognized the names of a few taverns here and there. It seemed like I was still living in the city of Sharia. Some names were conspicuous by their absence, though. I never mentioned Aisha, Norn, Lilia, Zenith, or Lucy. Every once in a while there was a reference to Zenoba or Julie, but some of those entries made me queasy. My future self apparently had his eye on Julie by this point. The girl had been my faithful pupil since she was a kid, and now I was looking to take advantage of her. I didn't want to believe I was capable of sinking so low. That said, I had to admit it wasn't totally implausible. In the face of crushing despair, I could imagine abandoning myself to the pursuit of meaningless pleasure, especially since I had the looks and money to make that lifestyle easy. Eris popped up somewhat frequently in these entries. although my future self was clearly doing his best to avoid her. She was living in Sharia as well, and whenever we ran into each other, she would beat me up with a furious scowl on her face. I'd like to catch that girl and teach her a lesson. I'd written in one entry, but I don't want her swearing revenge on me or something. Probably best to just keep my distance. Pretty pathetic stuff. Reading between the lines, though, I got the sense that my feelings toward Eris were more conflicted than I let on. Was there still a part of me that wanted to patch up our relationship somehow? After what happened to Sylphie and Roxy, maybe I'd just lost the ability to pursue an actual romance. It was hard to say for sure, but at the very least the bitter words I had written didn't fit cleanly with some of the actions I was describing. On another note, there were some disquieting events mixed in with all the debauchery. Zenoba and I had a price on our heads, courtesy of the Millis Church, and I sometimes had to fend off an assassin or bounty hunter. This didn't seem much of a problem, though. I was taking them down with ease so far. I turned the page after one such entry and found another sudden transition in the contents of the diary. It seemed like I'd skipped forward for a second time. Once again, there was no summary of the missing years. Now the paper type changed with every page, and I still wasn't dating my entries clearly. Norn's picture book and the Ruijerd figurines are both selling very well. I've also convinced the university to officially integrate my silent spell casting techniques into the curriculum. It seems the Holy Country sent a demand via the Kingdom of Asura that Ranoa hand me over, but as long as the Magic Nations consider me useful, I can't see that happening. Thanks to the Red Worm Mountains, it's no easy thing to invade a country on the central continent. They put the aggressor at an inherent disadvantage. Also, Asura doesn't seem to be aware that I'm the one who burned a decent section of their capital to the ground. I knew they were scum, but I suppose they're imbeciles as well. Zenoba is very close to completing his automaton now. It took longer than I expected, but we're almost there. I can't feel the excitement I did back when we started, though. Why am I even doing this? What's the point? The first automaton's complete. Zenoba made her in Sylphie's image. She has her own will and acts on her own initiative. However, she does anything I tell her to without question. She's obedient and meek, but has a bit of a jealous side. She really is the spitting image of the woman I used to know, in almost every way. But this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I need. I destroyed the Sylphie automaton. I expected Zenoba to be furious, but he apologized instead. That just made me feel guiltier. I owe that man more than I can ever repay. At the very least, he's earned my loyalty until the day I die. We made a new automaton that isn't based off of Sylphie or Roxy. Zenoba gave it the name 40. Apparently, it's his 40th masterpiece, according to him. We're mass-producing 40 sisters now, and the Magic Nations will be buying them from us. It's nice having countries as your main customers. They've got deep pockets. I don't know how useful the dolls would be in a military capacity, but Zenoba and I refined their design a great deal over the years. I'm guessing they're stronger than your average knight or adventurer, at least. Now that we've reached our goal, it feels like I've run out of things to do. I'll have to decide what my next research project will be. For the first time in a while, I'm actually feeling a little motivated. So we completed Zenoba's automated doll project eventually, huh? These entries gave no hints about how we accomplished it, unfortunately. I'd probably kept my research notes separate from this diary. That was kind of a pity. A little advice from the future might have sped up our progress immensely. It wasn't that big a deal, though. Zenoba was enjoying his research very much, and they say the journey's as important as the destination, right? I turned the page and was startled by another sudden shift in the tone of the diary. This one sheet of paper was badly wrinkled. I had clearly been crying on the page as I wrote these words. The man god showed up in my dreams. I can still feel his hand resting on my shoulder. I hate him. I hate him so much. I have to get more powerful and fast. I need to kill that bastard. It's my new purpose in life. Until the day he dies, Roxy and her child will never rest in peace. Neither will I, for that matter. Come to think of it, I wonder how Lilia and the others are doing. I haven't seen them since they left the house. I wonder how Lucy's turned out. I bet she's a beauty just like her mom. I hope she's doing well with her studies. I hope she's getting enough to eat. I wish like hell I hadn't fallen apart like that after Sylphie died. Aisha did come back to look after me eventually, but I can't imagine the others have forgiven me. Sending off a letter now wouldn't do any good. I've got so many regrets. How do I get stronger? Do I work on my magic? Maybe track down someone who can cast kingly or imperial spells? I don't think so. Based on what I've seen so far, spells past the saintly level seem to just get bigger in scale. They're not especially useful in combat. There are some exceptions, like that electric spell I came up with, but on the whole, my offensive capabilities are already adequate. The main issue is that I'm a glass cannon with mediocre mobility. I can't amplify my physical capabilities with aura, and that leaves me at a major disadvantage in both durability and speed. How do I compensate for those shortcomings? I found some information on the fighting god in a book. Legend has it that he wore a golden suit of armor that vastly enhanced his strength, speed, and endurance. When I discussed this with Zenoba, he came up with an intriguing idea. What if we made a Zalif prosthesis that covered my entire body? I don't know why I didn't think of this before. I can't envelop myself in aura, true, but when I feed mana to my artificial hand, I can enhance its strength dramatically. If I use my earth magic to create the sturdiest possible shell and then rework it into a full-body suit of armor, yeah, I think this might work. With help from Zenoba, I've completed my personal suit of armor. The thing stands more than 2 meters tall, and it's bulky to boot. It takes a lot of mana to control, too. In effect, I'm the only one capable of using this, and even I wouldn't be able to power it for that many days in a row. It's kind of an oversized hunk of junk, in all honesty. If only Cliff was still alive, maybe we could have made something more efficient, but there's no point dwelling on that now, I guess. In any case, I took a cue from some old video game and named it the Magic Armor. From this point, the diary turned to focus on my efforts to grow stronger. By nestling inside the magic armor, essentially an oversized version of the Zalif prosthesis, I could enhance my speed, power, and physical defense to match even the world's most powerful warriors. I could only maintain that level of performance for half a day at a time, but even at 30% output, I was capable of defeating most opponents I encountered. We'd clearly hit on something special, but we presumably weren't the first to come up with the idea, given the stories about the fighting god. I was already itching to get started on my own version. But were Zenoba and I even capable of designing the magic armor at this stage in our research? Well, maybe we're ready, maybe we aren't. I'm still going to make it happen. On a less positive note, it seemed my family had moved out of my house not long after Sylphie's death. That explained why I'd barely referenced them in the earlier entries. I could see Norn getting fed up with my womanizing quickly enough, but I'd somehow managed to get even Lilia to give up on me. Just how badly had I mistreated them? Then again, I didn't know the specifics. Maybe I'd moved them out for their own safety. I did have those assassins from Millis coming after me and all. Yeah, sure, let's go with that. All of a sudden, I found myself wanting to score brownie points with my family. Fortunately, today happened to be one of Norn's regularly scheduled nights at home. That seemed like an excellent reason to take them out for a meal. A little quality time couldn't hurt, right?
Brother Dare, lunch is ready. Come down and eat with us.
I rose from my chair and opened the door to find Aisha standing just outside in her usual maid outfit. There was a bit of sauce on her face. She'd probably been doing a little taste testing in the kitchen. You've got something on your face, kid.
Hee, thanks.
Aisha grinned cheerfully at me as I pulled my hand away. This kid had been devoted enough to take care of me by herself even when I turned into a no-good piece of trash. The old man hadn't mentioned her, but she was effectively the only family he had for years. It must have meant a lot to have her around. Hey, Aisha, is there anything you've been wanting lately?
Huh? Why are you asking?
I was thinking I might buy you a present one of these days. Just a little thank you for all the hard work, you know?
What? You shouldn't. I'd feel bad for Norn. But I guess I did see a really cute hair clip in the store the other day. Wink, wink.
You're not actually supposed to say the wink wink part out loud, you know? Who did she learn this kind of shamelessness from anyway? Me? Probably me. All right, I'll take you out to buy it sometime soon. We'll just have to keep it a secret from Norn.
Are you actually serious, brother dear? What are you playing at here? Gapst. Could it be you're craving some loving? Should I be awaiting your arrival in my bedroom tonight, milord? Tee-hee.
Okay, enough fooling around. Let's go eat before the food gets cold, huh?
Yes, sir.
Together, the two of us headed down to the dining room. Roxy and Norm weren't around at the moment, but we had a family meal with everyone else in the house. To me, at least, the food tasted noticeably better than usual. When I shared that thought with Lilia, I managed to get a little smile out of her. After lunch, I returned to the diary. With his magic armor complete, my future self began to travel the world, searching for a way to reach the man-god. I met many different people in the course of these journeys, but was frequently distressed by how little information I could find about my enemy. Eventually, I hit on the theory that people who'd been alive for a very long time were more likely to know something about the man-god and focused my attention on locating the oldest people in the world. At the same time, I continued to train relentlessly as a mage and develop new spells, gradually growing more powerful than before. In time, I mastered gravity manipulation magic, a variety of electric spells, and even a kind of magic that manipulation magic, a variety of electric spells, and even a kind of magic that manipulation sane. At some point, I came to the conclusion that magic itself was all-powerful and could be used to accomplish anything as long as you've got the knack of it. Naturally, there was no explanation of what the heck that was supposed to mean. This was also the section of the diary where I'd recorded my theories about Roxy catching petrification syndrome from that mouse, and the man-god's potential responsibility for Sylphie's death. At a glance, it seemed like I was making progress on many fronts. But as more time passed without any new information about the man-god, my future self began to grow increasingly bitter and hateful. At this point in my life, I'd become a genuinely horrible person. I provoked fights everywhere I went, crushing opponents much weaker than me just so I could sneer at them. I acted on impulse and instinct, even sexually assaulting random women. This sure as hell wasn't the kind of man I wanted to become. Eris made frequent appearances in these entries as well. She kept popping up along my route as I traveled around the world. Eris was as powerful as ever, and repeatedly defeated me in battle. There was no clear mention of this in the text, but she might have been trying to show me the error of my ways. My future self, however, began to think she might be an agent of the man-god. She was interfering with my progress, after all. Therefore, she was clearly under his control, and acting to protect his interests. Over time, I grew to hate her for it. I was amazed how easily I'd convinced myself of this, despite lacking any evidence whatsoever to support the theory. It was probably just what I'd wanted to believe. Eventually, Eris stopped beating me so easily and then stopped beating me at all. Maybe I'd grown stronger, or maybe she'd passed her peak physical years. I couldn't tell from the text. Finally, things came to a climax. I made Eris cry. It's been a long time since I saw her blubber like that. Maybe I took things too far. She might not be connected to the man-god after all. No, that doesn't make any sense. The woman's been following me around and getting in my way ever since Sylphie died. What else could explain that? She clammed up repeatedly during the interrogation, too. She knows something. She has to. Eris escaped today. I found her handcuffs with bite marks on them. Are that woman's teeth made of steel? Damn it all. I have an audience with Tophes tomorrow. It's hard to imagine that musclehead will give me anything useful, but like most of the immortal demons, she's been around for ages. There's a decent chance she knows about the man-god. I'll get it out of her, even if I have to beat her to a pulp. Eris is dead. Ghislaine blamed me for everything. None of this makes any damn sense. I'm going to try to summarize what happened yesterday. My audience with Etoffe turned into a battle. I was up against her and her entire personal guard. I was confident I could handle the Demon King, but more threw me off completely. I knew the man was a powerful mage, and I still let him catch me off guard. I was too focused on Etoffe herself. They had me on the ropes when Eris jumped in out of nowhere. She took an attack meant for me, and died to save my life. Ghislaine told me why afterward. She explained everything, going back to the day Eris showed up in Sharia. Eris just wanted to be with me. I had it all wrong all this time. She never stopped loving me, ever. That was the reason she followed me around. It was the only reason. I still can't believe it. There wasn't much detail in these entries, but it all matched up with what the old man had told me. Maybe I really did need to marry Eris too. Reading all this made me want to see her end up happy. It was going to take some real courage to take the first step, though. I had vaguely broached the subject with Sylphie, but still, well, the real first step had to be talking it over in detail. Sending the letter would come after that. I decided to push this topic from my mind until Roxy came home tonight and returned my attention to the diary. After Eris's death, there was a stretch of entries that said nothing particularly useful. I'd written only brief descriptions of traveling to certain places, meeting certain people, and fighting others. Among those I battled, I noticed some truly fearsome opponents, a Water Emperor here, a North Emperor there. But my victories didn't seem to bring me any pleasure, as I hadn't even bothered to record any details. Most of the entries were nothing more than a sentence or two along the lines of, "I killed X today." He didn't know anything about the man-god either. After a fair number of entries like this, there seemed to be another skip forward in time. The first longer entry in a while was of a very different nature from those that had preceded it. Zenoba's gone. A unit of temple knights had infiltrated the kingdom of Renoa without anyone noticing. By the time I rushed back, it was too late. They'd burned the mansion to the ground. I found Zenoba's charred body in front of the door to the basement. Ginger, Julie, and Aisha were lying inside it, their bodies cut to pieces. The temple knights were still in Renoa, so I tracked them down and killed them all. But murdering them was meaningless, of course. Zenoba did so much for me. He tried so hard to help me and to protect my family. But I wasn't there for him when he needed me. What's the point of having all this power anyway? I'm useless. Everyone's dead now, I guess. I'm the only one still standing. The others are all gone. I couldn't protect any of them. It's all the man-god's fault. I have to kill that bastard, if it's the last thing I do. Well, that was a downer. Losing both Zenoba and Aisha in such a horrible way must have been crushing. That said, I was slightly curious why my future self hadn't tried to locate the rest of my family. Maybe I decided that I had no right to call myself Lucy's father. Or maybe Lilia and the others had died as well, and those events just weren't recorded in this diary. Norn's name hadn't come up in a very long time, which wasn't exactly reassuring. Okay, let's stop speculating. If it wasn't in the diary, it hadn't happened. That was how I needed to approach this. In any case, it didn't seem like Zenoba's death was necessarily the man-god's doing, but my future self was blaming everything on him. At this point in my life, I'd clearly developed a single-minded obsession with taking revenge. I threw myself into the search for the man-god even more intensely than before, viciously butchering anyone who stood in my way. And finally, I found a lead. My heart is pounding as I write this. I'm currently in a remote corner of the Bagarit continent. This was said to be an uninhabited, unexplored region, but I discovered an ancient ruin here, a remnant of the ancient dragonfolk civilization. And on its walls, I found murals lined with writing. This is what I read on one of them. This world is divided into 6, the world of dragons, the world of men, the world of demons, the world of beasts, the ocean world, and the sky world. These 6 worlds are arrayed like the faces of a great cube. The inside of this cube is a place known as the Barren World. Passing through it is the only way to travel from one face of the cube to another, but this is only possible by means of a very specific method. Unfortunately, the mural had crumbled away after this section, but the very last legible sentence read as follows. The man-god stands at the center of the barren world. I've finally found what I was looking for. I'm planning to stay here for some time to thoroughly analyze everything written on these walls. The murals contain a historical record of the dragonfolk's attempts to find a way to the barren world's center. Summoning and teleportation magic were apparently developed as offshoots of their research into spells for traveling through the barren world to reach others. I may need to focus my research in that direction. I found everything there is to find in these ruins. It seems the ancient dragonfolk attempted to create something that would allow them to reach the center of the barren world, but I don't know what that something was. The section of the walls describing it have crumbled into dust. Still, their method was clearly something quite similar to summoning or teleportation magic. Unfortunately, I don't have the knowledge I need to recreate the kind of spell that was described. Perugius might. However, I don't know of anyone more familiar with summoning spells. Perhaps he can point me in the right direction. Perugius knew nothing. He doesn't even know who or what the man-god is, for that matter. The only thing he does know is that Laplace flew into a furious rage at the mere mention of him. I'm back to square one yet again. Laplace clearly knew of the man-god, but he's no longer among the living. I suppose there's Orsted. Maybe he knows something. I can't find so much as a rumor about Orsted's whereabouts. I don't think I'll ever track the man down, no matter how hard I try. Maybe I'm better off focusing on my research on teleportation magic. After decades of constant battle, I can't move as nimbly as I used to. I may not have much time left to waste. No, it's too early to throw in the towel. I should try to find more dragonfolk ruins while I'm still capable of traveling. Huh. So this world was sort of like a hollow cube, with the man-god at its center. That was a little disturbing. It did explain why teleportation always felt more like getting sucked under the ground. You were being pulled into the barren world and traveling through it to your destination. Of course, that didn't mean you could just dig down through the ground to reach the man-god. The connection between the worlds probably wasn't that literal. The diary seemed to jump forward in time again after this entry. My future self really hadn't been too consistent with this thing. I discovered a second dragonfolk ruin high in the mountains of the demon continent. I wish I understood why they built these things in such dangerous, well-hidden places. This whole area is swarming with powerful monsters. I suppose Perugius's floating fortress might also qualify as a ruin, in some sense of the word. Maybe this is number 3 then. In any case, I plan to start exploring it tomorrow. My efforts were rewarded. I found a complete version of the mural I studied some years ago, including the section describing their method for reaching the center of the barren world. The ancient dragonfolk created 5 sacred treasures. Using all 5 sends you to the barren world instead of merely passing through it. I finally found a way to reach the man-god. Finally. But I'm over 60 now, and my body's in terrible condition. I don't know if I'll make it in time. I paid Perugius another visit. This time he had information for me. The 5 sacred treasures created by the ancient dragonfolk are held by their 5 generals. All of them are necessary to open the door to the barren world by means of the dragon god's secret art. However, one of these generals is already dead, and their treasure is lost. The whereabouts of their successor are also unknown. Perugius believes that the missing general will appear within a few decades. Something about the way he worded this struck me as odd, but I can't remember exactly why. Lately, it's getting harder to pry open the cabinet of my memories. Is Perugius still hiding something from me? It's an infuriating thought, but he's the only person left whom I can reminisce about the better days with. I don't want to kill him. He did say that Orsted might know something about the secret art, but nobody has the slightest idea where Orsted is. In any case, if it's going to be decades before the last dragon general appears, there's no hope left for me. I'm sure I won't live that long. My body's already on the verge of breaking down. I can feel death creeping up on me. What am I supposed to do? Damn it! I'm running out of time. I can't get my hands on all 5 of the dragon general's treasures. I don't think I'm capable of creating my own imitations or reproducing the secret art itself. There's just not enough to go on. I wouldn't know where to start. In other words, I can't make it to the barren world. I'm so sick and tired of this. How long do I have to keep struggling forward alone? Who am I even doing this for? Even my hatred for the man-god is starting to dull. I'm just so damn tired. The fire and determination of the earlier entries was giving way to resignation and bitterness. There weren't many pages left. These entries were probably from about 50 years in the future then. My future self had spent decades struggling constantly with precious few successes and never reached his goal. After a certain point, anyone would have grown too exhausted to think straight. The person I was today would probably have given up much earlier. I usually keep my research notes separate from this diary, but I'm going to add an entry here about my latest theory. During my research into teleportation magic, I arrived at an interesting thesis. Specifically, by combining it with the magic described on the ancient murals, and tweaking with the execution, it might be possible to travel back in time. However, if my theory is correct, it could require an enormous amount of mana to travel even a few seconds backward. How much would you need to jump back years then? I'm going to try traveling to the past. I still have this old diary on my hands. Using it as a focal point, I just might be able to jump back to the day I started writing it, the day the man-god tricked me into releasing that mouse and killing Roxy. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know what will happen to me if it does work either. I'm familiar with the concept of time paradoxes after all. I wish I were more confident this will work. It's hard to even say if I'll jump back in time as I am now, or just revert to my younger self. Assuming it's the former, though, I need to go over what I'm going to say. At the very least, I need to cover the petrification syndrome incident, Eris, and the man god. I'm not sure I'll be able to explain it all. I'm not sure my younger self will even believe me. And if I revert instead, I don't know how I'll be able to interact with Sylphie and Roxy. I do want to see them again, of course. I want to tell them how sorry I am. But the thought of overriding the mind of a happy young man with mine is, honestly, kind of sickening. Perhaps I should take more time to experiment first, but given the potential risks of a time paradox, I'm hesitant to do so. Say I were to hop back several days in time. What if I leave my memories behind in the process? I'd be trapping myself in an endless, meaningless loop, dooming myself to live in this miserable world for all eternity. At least I'd get to see Roxy and Sylphie again the other way. All right, enough of this. I'm going to stop overthinking things. It's not like I have anything left to lose anyway. I accomplished nothing with my life. I'm a waste of oxygen. Maybe I'll screw this up and ruin everything again, but so what? Why should I give a damn? And if I succeed, well, maybe I can give the man god a taste of his own medicine. Once I finished reading the final entry, I closed the diary. The back cover was scarred and battered, just like the front. Now that I'd read the whole thing, I could see the meaning in those scratches. They were testaments to the long, painful years I'd spent carrying this thing around. My future self must have jumped back in time immediately after writing that final entry, only to realize that he'd run out of mana in the process. I couldn't begin to understand the principles behind using teleportation magic to travel back in time. That said, I wasn't sure why he'd come back in one great leap. Based on what he'd written in the diary, it might have been safer to hop back in multiple steps to avoid this mana issue. Was he just too old and tired to realize the benefits of that approach? No, it probably hadn't even occurred to him that he might not have enough mana for this. The man must have had absolute confidence in his ability to cast any spell. In any case, this diary simply didn't hold all the details I needed on his research. There was no guarantee that the conclusions he'd drawn were entirely correct, either. He could have misinterpreted those ancient murals, for one thing. Come to think of it, I had seen an old mural in the underground levels of Perugius's fortress. Was that the sort of thing we were talking about there? That one didn't seem to have anything to do with summoning magic, but from the sound of things, there were many others of its kind hidden away all across the world. Anyway, for now I had answers to my most important questions. Now I needed to take action before I ended up going down the same road.
Hello, everyone. I'm home.
Roxy was back from work. Perfect timing. First things first, then. Tonight, I needed to have a serious discussion with my two wives. They needed to know about Eris and the fact that we were all in danger. Chapter 3. Resolve.
Rudy had been acting strangely lately. He spent entire days holed up in his study, and then came out looking pale and anxious. What exactly was he doing in there? I was getting worried, but he wouldn't give me a straight answer when I asked about it. My last attempt had ended with him dodging the question and pulling me into bed with him. I was sure he had something on his mind, though, and it was really starting to bother me. I went to Roxy to ask for advice and found out she felt the same way. So you noticed as well, Sylphie? I'm afraid Rudy tends to keep things bottled up inside. Let's try to be ready in case he needs our support. I decided that if things dragged on like this much longer, we might need to press him for some answers. But then, just after dinner, Rudy finally broke his silence.
Sylphie? Roxy? Could I trouble the two of you to come by my room this evening?
His tone was a little awkward, but that wasn't too unusual. It was just the way he tended to speak when he wanted to sleep with both of us at once. I never really understood why he felt so hesitant about these things. It wasn't like he had anything to feel guilty about. In any case, Roxy and I made our usual preparations that evening. We took a bath together and washed each other carefully, then put on the perfume we reserved for these special occasions. I changed into a set of underwear I'd bought recently and picked out a nightgown to go with it. Rudy seemed to prefer soft ones with sleeves over the skimpier kind, so I went with something relatively modest. I looked down at myself and considered undoing 2 of the front buttons to expose a little more skin. I wasn't exactly busty, so it probably wouldn't be that alluring, but I did want to earn as much of his attention as I possibly could. What if he thinks I'm desperate, though? No, this is Rudy we're talking about. It'll be fine. Just the other day, I'd noticed him looking down my shirt when I left a few buttons undone. I think he was trying to be subtle about it, but it was really obvious. He seemed to be enjoying himself, though, so I pretended not to notice. He carried me off to bed a little later. Roxy was wearing her usual one-piece nightgown. She didn't seem to have anything on underneath it, though. She was pretty aggressive in her own right. Anyway, the 2 of us were now primed and ready. We took a few deep breaths and then headed to Rudy's bedroom.
Rudy was sitting quietly in his chair waiting for us. Roxy and I sat down on the bed next to each other. I sat on the right and Roxy on the left. We'd never decided our places beforehand, but it was a bit of a habit by now. Rudy would usually wriggle his way in between us with a leering grin, but today he looked a little different. There was a serious expression on his face and he wasn't moving from his chair. After a long moment, he cleared his throat and turned to Roxy. Roxy?
Yes?
How's Norn acquitting herself at school?
Quitting herself? Really? What a weird choice of words. Roxy seemed a little amused as well.
Why ask me? Didn't Norn tell you herself just the other day?
Well, I was hoping to get some candid impressions from you. As an educator?
How long was he going to keep talking like this? It was getting harder not to laugh.
All right then. Her academic performance is average, and she's making fairly slow progress with the sword. I'm impressed by her efforts with the student council, though. She seems to be earning some recognition for her disciplinary work in particular. The university has quite a few rowdy students, but everyone listens when she scolds them. I'm sure it has something to do with the fact that you're her brother, but she's also earned a great deal of affection from some of the older students. Either way, no one ever tries to pick a fight with her, and she seems to have lots of friends. I don't think you have anything to be worried about.
I see. Thank you very much.
She wasn't exaggerating either. Norn really was doing her best out there. From what the student council members told me, she was probably the hardest worker they had. Sometimes I wished I could be more of a big sister to her.
And how about you, Roxy?
What do you mean?
Has anything been bothering you lately? I don't know. Maybe you've been getting peckish a lot, grabbing lots of snacks from the kitchen?
No. You've actually been pushing so much food on me lately that I'm a little worried I might put on weight.
How are things going at school then?
Oh, well enough. I suppose there are a few students who make fun of me for being so short, or refuse to pay attention to my lectures, but that's fairly rare.
What? They're ignoring your classes? What a bunch of hopeless ingrates! How about I teach them a remedial lesson in manners, Roxy? I'll make sure they grovel at your feet next time they see you.
Huh? And no, I don't think that's necessary. This just comes with the territory when you're a new teacher, really. But thank you for the offer anyway.
Roxy bowed her head to Rudy, looking somewhat exasperated, but also somewhat bashful. I noticed she was playing with the ends of her braids. I understood how she felt. It made me a little envious sometimes, seeing just how deeply Rudy respected her.
Anyway, I guess there is one other thing that's been on my mind.
And what's that? If you don't mind my asking?
I'd prefer to be sure about this one before I tell you anything in particular.
I look forward to hearing all about it then.
Ooh, I think I know what this is about. Come to think of it, Roxy had mentioned feeling a bit odd lately. Maybe I'd have to arrange for a little celebration? Or was that too premature at this stage? We didn't know for sure yet, after all.
All right then. Sophie?
Yes, Rudy? As the conversation turned to me, I tilted my head to one side and tried to look as charming as possible. Rudy's line of sight drifted down from my face toward my upper body. My strategy was a success from the look of things.
How's Lucy been doing lately, you think?
Well, you're keeping an eye on her yourself, aren't you? She's a happy, healthy baby.
You haven't overheard her muttering in the heavens above, and this earth below I alone am uniquely honored, or anything, have you?
What the heck are you talking about? I think she might be crawling around on her own before too long.
Hmm.
Thanks to Lilia's help, things really were going smoothly with Lucy. Princess Ariel seemed to feel that children were best raised by maids and attendants rather than their mothers. But Grandma Eloise told me I should try to give my child as much personal loving care as I could. I tended to agree with Eloise, and Rudy seemed to want us both to be involved in raising Lucy, so I've been putting in lots of time and effort.
Have you noticed anything strange lately, Sylphie? Anything on your mind?
Not really. I guess I'm wondering why my husband's hiding things from me, but that's about it. The words just came out on their own. I hadn't intended to be that harsh on him, but
Right. Sorry about that.
so there was something going on then. Was he ever going to clue us in? After a moment, Rudy looked back to me. This time his gaze was steady and determined. Whenever he got this look in his eyes, you knew it was Rudy at his best.
Actually, this is exactly the reason I asked the two of you to stop by tonight. At these words, I sat up straighter and buttoned up my nightgown. Roxy straightened up as well, although her expression was a little uncertain. The problem is, I'm not sure how to explain. I guess I'll start at the beginning. A few days ago, I met a certain individual.
Could you be more specific?
Right. He was something like a blessed child, I guess. One with the power to predict the future. Rudy went on to describe his conversation with this person. The details were alarming, to say the least. Basically, there was someone out there who wanted to harm him and his family. Terrible things might happen to us if this mysterious enemy had their way. And in order to keep us safe, Rudy might have to do some things that seemed very strange from time to time.
To be honest, I wanted to think he was taking this too seriously. But I could tell that Rudy was convinced it was completely true. I could tell he was keeping some of the details to himself. There were probably parts of this story he thought it was better for us not to know. I didn't feel great, of course. Still, I could understand why he wanted to be very cautious about this situation. Okay then, is there anything we can do to help?
I'm sure there will be. To be honest, though, I'd rather not put the two of you in too much danger.
There he goes again. This had been coming up a lot with Rudy lately. I felt like it had started right after his father's death. It was nice to know he cared so much about us, but he could get a little overprotective sometimes. I wasn't a helpless child anymore. I could pull my own weight these days. Doesn't that mean you'd be putting yourself in danger without us around to help?
Can't say for sure yet, but it's pretty likely, yeah.
Well, I don't like the sound of that. That battle with the Tafe had been bad enough. Rudy was a powerful mage, but he never wanted to fight anyone. And yet, he was always flying off on some mission or other and nearly getting himself killed. Was I supposed to just sit around, waiting to cheer him up when he limped back home? That was starting to get old. I wanted to go with him at the very least. I might be able to help out somehow. Then again, the last thing I wanted was to be a liability.
All right, I understand.
Roxy had spoken up for the first time in a while. Fiddling with her hair, she looked Rudy in the eyes and smiled.
While you're out and about, I'll keep Norn and Aisha safe.
Her voice was clear and confident. She seemed to have genuinely accepted this as her role to play.
Are you really okay with that, Roxy? I couldn't help thinking there was a part of her that wanted to tag along as well. But Roxy just nodded.
I know Rudy would rather put himself at risk than see his family in danger.
Sure. Come to think of it, Roxy had been there with Rudy when his father died. It was hard for me to picture just how devastated he'd been by that tragedy. But from the sound of things, he'd sunk into a very deep depression. At the very least, it was enough of a shock that he ended up breaking his promise to me. Cut it out, Sylphie. You're just being sulky now. Rudy had come back to me in the end. That was what really mattered, right?
That said, Sylphie, I don't intend to just sit around and watch while Rudy puts his life at risk for us.
What was that supposed to mean? Hadn't she just promised to stay at home?
We can keep a careful eye on him, and if we decide he really needs our help, we'll follow him whether he wants us to or not.
Oh, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. We didn't need Rudy's permission to help him. We could make up our own minds. As long as things turned out all right in the end, he wouldn't have any reason to complain. Yeah, I guess you're right. Okay.
Rudy listened to all of this with a little half smile on his face. I'd half expected him to try and tell us off, but instead he just listened, with something like trust in his eyes.
You go off and do what you want, Rudy. Don't worry about things back here. We'll keep everyone safe and sound.
All right then, it's good to know I'll have you two watching my back if things get ugly.
There was some genuine relief behind his smile, and maybe it was just my imagination, but I thought his eyes were shining slightly. I had to admit, I was impressed with how smoothly Roxy had handled this. There was a reason Rudy respected her so much. In any case, the most important thing was that he could approach this challenge with a clear mind. And if he got himself into trouble, I could always go help him out. I'd be the good, loyal wife most of the time, but when things got ugly, I'd ride to the rescue. Yeah, that was the kind of relationship I wanted.
Moving on then. There was one other thing, actually.
I'd been getting a little pumped up there, but the conversation wasn't over yet. For some reason, Rudy's voice sounded awfully meek all of a sudden. His body language looked a little different, too. He'd been choosing his words carefully this entire time, but now it sounded like he was reluctant to say anything at all.
I'm not sure how to put this, to be honest.
Is it an awkward problem?
Very awkward. It's not an easy thing to tell you two.
Well, now he had me anxious. Could this have something to do with how haggard he'd looked lately? Hopefully he hadn't caught some kind of disease that magic couldn't cure.
I think, there's a chance we might add one more person to the family.
Is he talking about a woman? Yeah, that has to be it. Well, I didn't really have any grounds to complain. He dropped a few hints about this earlier, and I hadn't objected or discouraged him. That didn't mean I was ready to give my approval to just anyone, though. My feelings about this weren't quite that simple. Who is it? Nana Hoshi? I tried to keep my voice neutral as possible. I felt like I'd succeeded. I didn't sound angry, at least. If it was Nana Hoshi, though, that felt a little wrong to me. I didn't think she really loved Rudy in the way we did. Her feelings were something more like gratitude. She probably wouldn't refuse him if he pushed her for a relationship, but that didn't mean she'd welcome it.
No, it's not Namahoshi.
Well, that was a bit of a relief.
For some reason, though, Rudy was looking even more guilty than before. It's a woman named Eris.
Iris? Who was that again? I'd heard the name before, but it wasn't someone I...
Isn't that the girl you were tutoring during your stay in the Fitta region, Rudy?
It was enough to jog my memory.
Wasn't she the person who caused your condition?
Yeah, I guess she was.
Had Rudy already forgotten how depressed he was back when he arrived at the university? I hadn't picked up on it at the time, but after seeing the way he was transformed by our marriage, I realized that he'd been suffering from a serious lack of self-confidence. That condition was no laughing matter for him. It was hard for me to fully understand his feelings, but I knew he'd been suffering. It had been a bit of a shock for me as well when I found out. Do you still love her, even after what she did to you?
Not as much as I love you too. That's one thing I can say for sure.
I felt myself blushing. Rudy could be such a lady killer when he wanted to. It was hard to suppress the urge to squeal a little. I almost wanted to go brag to Linnea and Priscilla about that line. It was a shame they weren't around anymore. Gah! Stop it, Sylphie! Focus up! We're talking about this heiress person! Don't let him distract you! Okay, so... Is she the one who wants to make up with you, even though she dumped you?
Well, that's the thing. I might have been wrong about her dumping me. It sounds like her feelings never really changed at all.
Maybe so. But she still broke your heart, right?
Yeah, that's true.
In theory, I didn't have any real objection to Rudy taking on a third wife. I'd come to terms with our arrangement by now. It wasn't like I didn't want to have him all to myself, of course. But Rudy wasn't a member of the Millis Church, and I knew I wasn't strong enough to support him all by myself. As long as it was someone who loved him and whom he loved, I wasn't going to object. I'd made up my mind about that some time ago. But we were talking about someone who'd hurt him deeply in the past. That made things a lot more complicated. You know, Rudy, I still remember how sad and desperate you were.
Yeah. Back then, I couldn't have forgiven Eris. Just the idea of seeing her again probably would have terrified me.
So why were things different now? Maybe it had something to do with that blessed child he'd run into the other day. They might have made some prediction involving her. That didn't feel like a good... I mean, if someone had told me you're going to marry a man named Rudeus and have 5 children with him, it would probably have been pretty exciting. But I wouldn't have run out and married the first guy named Rudeus I could find. Did it really make sense for Rudy to marry this woman if he wasn't even sure that he loved her?
If you're firmly opposed to the idea, I won't marry her. But at the very least, I think I need to see her and talk things through. Rudy paused and frowned, as if something had just occurred to him. You know, the thing is, Eris has been training in a place called the Sword Sanctum for years now, and it sounds like she was doing it for me. Wouldn't it be kind of harsh to just shoot her down when she finally comes back to rejoin me?
Well, yeah, I guess it would be... I could kind of imagine how painful it would be to have the rug pulled out from under you like that after years of hard work. I put in a lot of effort myself back in Buena Village trying to catch up with Rudy. What if the displacement incident had never happened, and Rudy had never bothered returning to Buena Village? What if I tracked him down, only to find him married to another woman? That would have been one heck of a shock. I'm not really saying I'm opposed or anything. It's just, I don't know. I've never even met this person. That was the heart of the issue, really. I didn't know Eris at all. Until this moment, I'd always thought of her as a cruel person who'd mistreated Rudy. It sounded like that was a misunderstanding, though. She hadn't meant to hurt him, right?
Could I interject? It seems to me that we should all defer our decision on this until after we've actually met Eris.
You think?
Yes. For one thing, I get the impression you're not entirely sure of your own feelings yet, Rudy. Once you see her again, I'm sure it'll be much easier to make up your mind.
How did Roxy herself feel about all this? The last time we discussed Rudy taking another wife, she'd sounded accepting of the idea. But it was hard to tell what she was thinking right now.
And in any case, Sylphie already asked as much of you.
I blinked in confusion. I wasn't sure what she was talking about anymore.
You don't remember, Sylphie? I think your exact words would just make sure you bring her to meet me first.
Oh, right. Yeah, I did say that, didn't I?
Bring Eris here and introduce her to us, Rudy. We'll talk things through and get to know each other. But if it just doesn't seem like it's going to work out, I'll have to oppose the idea as well.
The more I thought about it, the more it sounded like the most reasonable idea. We weren't committing to anything yet, but we could stay open to the idea. Roxy sure did have a good head on her shoulders. Watching her in action made me feel a little inadequate as a wife.
Of course, I imagine we'll have to discuss this idea with a number of other people as well. But for what it's worth, Rudy, you have my support and my trust.
Thank you, Roxy. That means a lot.
All I ask is that you try not to forget about me completely, no matter how many girls you end up marrying.
Rest assured, I couldn't forget about you if I tried.
I'll take that as a promise, then.
Absolutely.
She was clever and thoughtful, and Rudy trusted her completely. It made me kind of jealous sometimes. No, that was the wrong way to think about it. I just have to do my best to follow in her footsteps. I can be a grown-up, too. Just you watch.
Does that sound okay, Sylphie? I'm sorry about all this.
It's all right. Sorry for being so difficult today. It wasn't really...
Mushoku Tensei Vol15 by Reincarnation. Cast by Artale Studio. If you are interested in creating your own audio drama like this, please visit rtail.ai and use promotion code RTAIL to activate your account. Now, enjoy the story.
Fair of me, after all those things I said last time.
Rudy and I ended up apologizing to each other for some reason. I could hear Roxy chuckling softly.
It was nice, this arrangement we'd arrived at. I felt totally comfortable in this room. It was something I couldn't get anywhere else, even with Princess Ariel and Luke. But now we might be adding someone else into the equation. That made me a little anxious. This girl wasn't going to steal Rudy away from us, was she?
Rudeus. After our conversation, the three of us slept side by side in my bed. I wasn't quite callous enough to try and start a threesome after a discussion that heavy. Also, Eris's face kept popping into my thoughts, which wasn't great for my emotional state. I'd thought I was over all that, but the more I thought about her, the more I could feel that old anxiety and self-doubt bubbling up from deep inside my gut. Just as Roxy had pointed out, I wasn't too sure how I felt about Eris at this point, and everything I knew about her feelings had come secondhand. One way or the other, I had to settle things between us. To be honest, though, the idea of seeing her again was scary. There was definitely going to be some punching involved. From the sound of things, Eris had gotten unbelievably strong in the last few years. There was no telling how she might react if I walked up to her with Sylphie and Roxy at my side. The diary hadn't mentioned her attacking Sylphie or anything, but there was no guarantee those entries were totally accurate, and I'd obviously left a lot of details out. Also, a few poorly chosen words could easily take things in a dangerous direction. I had good reason to be worried. It was hard to guess how things would turn out when I saw Eris again. With everything on my mind, it took a while before I managed to get to sleep. That night, the man god paid me a visit. I found myself in a familiar pure white space. As always, I'd reverted to the man I was in my previous life. According to my future self, this was the barren world, a sort of four-dimensional space, sitting at the center of a cube composed of 6 other worlds. When you used teleportation magic, you traveled through this plane of reality. But based on the old man's research, there was no easy way to travel into it. Here I was, though, standing at its center. What did that mean, exactly? Given the change in my appearance, maybe this was a kind of summoning that only affected your mind or your soul. The man god was here, as always, with his usual, "Wait, no, he's not smirking for once." In fact, his body language suggested he was in a distinctly bad mood, although it was hard to tell for sure, what with all the blurriness.
Well, this is no fun at all.
Yeah, okay. That sounded like irritation.
Had to go and ruin everything. Jumping back in time to warn yourself? Come on, that's just not fair. And everything was going so well, too.
Okay, I get it. You're not happy. Does that mean the old man was telling me the truth? Have you been playing me for a fool all this time? Did you kill Roxy and Sylphie? I guess this means his plan worked. Did he just give you a taste of your own medicine?
Questions, questions, questions. Always with the questions. Who knows? Who cares? It does seem like your future self was laboring under quite a few misconceptions, just so you know.
Well, he's messing with me again, but it doesn't sound like his heart's really in it. I need to try and stay calm. I need to keep this conversation going.
Ooh, he needs to keep the conversation going. Will you stop pretending to be some kind of tactician? Haven't you realized you're a moron yet?
Oh, shut up. I might be a moron, but I'm still going to try my best. On that note, mind telling me something? Why would you do this to me? Why would you try to harm my family?
Why would I do that? Maybe I just wanted to kill them so I could watch you freak out about it. Whatever.
Wow. He's really half-assing it today. It's almost like he's sulking like he set up some big elaborate trap in a video game. But then somebody messed it all up by wandering off in the wrong direction, and now he doesn't even want to play anymore.
Yeah, more or less. You messed it all up, you stupid, thoughtless jerk.
Can you just tell me what's going on here? I don't care what your ultimate goal is. I'm really not interested in getting in your way. My future self told me I can't kill you anyway. He told me to suck up to you, not to defy you, and I'm fine with that, personally. I mean, things were fine between us up until now. Even if you were just setting me up to betray me, you still helped me out plenty of times. You can use me if you want to. It's not like I have any reason to disobey you. All I'm asking is that you don't go after my family.
Well, aren't you accommodating?
I mean, whatever you did to that old man, you haven't managed to harm me yet. As far as I know, at least. You did try to kill Roxy and her baby, but she came out of it unscathed. Since she's okay, I think I can pretend that never happened. I can still control my emotions. I want to find some way to coexist with you before things cross the point of no return. The man god paused for a moment, apparently considering something that had just occurred to him.
What if I told you that my goal is world peace? Would you believe that?
World peace, huh? Sounds great. I'm on board. Love and peace is my personal motto. Nothing better than a tranquil day spent rolling around in bed, am I right?
Let's put the sex thing aside for now.
Sure thing.
You remember that dragon god guy? Your old buddy Orsted? Well, his ultimate goal is to destroy the world.
Wait, really? I wasn't getting that vibe from him, honestly.
He's been skulking around in the shadows for a long time, making all sorts of evil plans. Here's the thing. If I die, this world will break apart into 1,000,000 pieces and fade away completely. So Orsted's looking for a way to murder me.
You sure you didn't do something horrible and piss him off? I don't know. Maybe get his family killed for no apparent reason?
Don't you remember what I told you earlier? I can't do anything to Orsted. As far as I know, he has no reason to hate me.
Well, okay then. Go on.
Orsted is very powerful, but he's also alone. His curse keeps it that way, and as long as he's isolated, he'll never be able to harm me.
Why don't you just ignore him then?
That was the plan, until you appeared.
What do I have to do with anything?
Well, you're not the problem, exactly. But it seems like you and your descendants are immune to the effects of Orsted's curse. At some point in the future, those descendants are going to join forces with him, and together, they're going to kill me.
Oh, I get it. So that's why you went after Roxy when she got pregnant. The old man thought you manipulated Luke into dragging Sylphie off to die, too. But he didn't say anything about you targeting Lucy. I guess it's my second or third kid who's going to be the problem, huh? Wait, couldn't you have just killed me years ago or something? Why would you let things come this far?
Well, when I first noticed you during the displacement incident, I did try a few things just to see what would happen. I'm afraid you've got a very strong destiny, though. It never worked out the way I wanted it to.
A strong destiny? What does that even mean?
How can I explain? I can see a number of broad routes the future might follow, branching out ahead of me, and I can tamper with the course of events to some degree. But when I try to manipulate events involving people with strong destinies, it rarely works out in the end. You survived that fight with Orsted, for example. And even though I tried to keep you far away from Roxy, you ended up finding her, marrying her, and having a kid.
Oh, is this that principle of causality thing? Like when you travel to the past to rewrite history, but things end up working out the exact same way somehow.
Something like that, I guess.
Huh? Okay, so Roxy and I were destined to get married then. That makes me kind of happy.
Can't say I feel the same.
Sure, right? Sorry. But anyway, why did you decide to go after my kids in particular? I mean, these descendants we're talking about are a few generations later, I'm assuming. Couldn't you just deal with them before they joined forces with Orsted?
The ones directly responsible for my death will also be born with extremely strong destinies. It's not just you, by the way. Sylphie, Eris, and Roxy's are strong as well, and your kids will also be on the stronger side. That said, women have times in their life where their destiny gets a little vague.
Huh? Wait, do you mean?
That's right. It's when they have a child inside them.
I had to fight down a sudden, intense urge to punch the fuzzy figure in front of me in the face. The only thing that stopped me was a gut feeling that I couldn't possibly beat him in a fight, not here, not in this form.
Of course, I still managed to fail somehow.
Why'd you bother murdering Sylphie then? She wasn't pregnant at the time, and she'd already given me a daughter.
What? Are we talking about that diary now? Hard for me to comment, but I suppose I was trying to play it safe. On the other hand, maybe it was just Sylphie's destiny to die if she left you at that point.
I guess it's possible. God, that's depressing.
You know, I really did think my plan was perfect. Once I realized your destiny was strong, I took things nice and slow. I guided you along, step by step, all so I could strike in the most efficient way at your most vulnerable moment.
Is he trying to piss me off now? Ugh, calm down. Don't let him get to you. Roxy and Sylphie are both fine. It's all good.
I'm not sure why you're trying so hard to convince yourself of that. You don't think you've won, do you? Just so you know, your children's destinies won't be as strong as yours, your wives, or your descendants. I'm not planning to give up either. I really would prefer not to die.
Well, yeah, I guess you wouldn't. Isn't there some other way we could approach this, though? I'm willing to do anything to save my family. Maybe I could start a family tradition of teaching each new generation not to trust Orsted. We can tell our kids all about how wonderful the man-god is, and how evil that nasty dragon god is.
Sorry, won't work. Destiny isn't that easy to derail.
Can you think a little harder, please? I have a pretty strong destiny myself, right? There has to be something I can do.
Oh,
What? Did you think of something?
well, I'm not sure if it's even possible, but there's certainly a chance it could work. You did say you'd do anything at all, right?
Yeah.
Okay then.
Pausing for just a moment, the man-god grinned at me like a mischievous child.
Go kill Orsted for me. Go kill Orsted for me?
Rudy, that hurts! Rudy!
When I awoke, I was squeezing Sylphie tightly in my arms. My throat was dry and my entire body felt strangely cold. Sorry, Sylphie. I released my iron grip, leaving my poor wife coughing for air. I touched my face and found my forehead covered in sweat.
Are you all right, Rudy?
Came a quiet voice from behind me. I turned and found that Roxy had wrapped her arms around me. I'm sorry. I sat up in bed. It was still the middle of the night, from the looks of things. Had that just been a dream? No, not just a dream anyway. It was the man-god, no doubt about it.
What's the matter, Rudy? Are you okay?
Sylphie also sat up and started to wipe my sweat with her sleeve. Roxy was still holding me from behind, rubbing my back gently with one hand. I'm all right. I just had, a weird dream, that's all. Go kill Orsted for me. There was no doubt about it. That was what he'd said. Was he serious? What was he playing at here? Calm down. Calm down, damn it. Let's think this through. Orsted was an open enemy of the man-god. There was no question about that. However, Orsted was isolated. He couldn't beat the man-god on his own. That seemed to be an absolute certainty as well. It was hard for me to understand why someone that powerful needed help, but that was just the way things were. At some point in the future, my descendants would end up becoming his allies. Together, they'd make their way to the man-god and defeat him. For that reason, the man-god had tried to prevent them from coming into existence. That was why he killed Roxy and Sylphie. He didn't want them having children. Without my family in the picture, Orsted would never make it to the barren world, and the man-god would be victorious by default. But today, the man-god realized that he couldn't eliminate my family. That had to be why he'd ordered me to kill Orsted. Both Orsted and my descendants had to be alive in order to defeat him. As long as one or the other was out of the picture, the man-god would be safe. The question was whether I could possibly defeat Orsted. From the sound of things, my destiny was very strong, but surely that applied to Orsted too. After all, he was still alive despite waging war against the man-god for many years. How the hell was I supposed to kill him anyway? He was unbelievably powerful. I didn't have any means to hurt him. Or did I? That diary contained a fairly detailed description of something my future self had used in battle, something that had amplified his power significantly. Maybe I could make my own version of the magic armor. It didn't seem impossible, and I had a feeling it would be extremely effective in combat. My future self had also used a wide range of magic, including gravity manipulation, teleportation, and electrical attacks. He hadn't bothered to tell me how he mastered those spells, though It was hard to imagine I could figure out the weirder ones anytime soon. That said, in my first fight with Orsted, I'd managed to deal a small amount of damage to him with a stone cannon, and my electric spell had done a number on Atof. In other words, I had ways of hurting him. As long as I could stay alive long enough to use them, I might have some chance of winning. Damn it! This is Orsted we're talking about. Why am I even taking this seriously?
Rudy, please tell me if there's something wrong. Don't keep it bottled up inside.
Sylphie looked like she was about to cry. I pulled her head against my chest with my right hand. I reached back to grab Roxy's hand with my left. I have to keep them safe, that's why. Stupid question, really. It looks like I'm going to have to kill someone.
What?
Rudy, what are you talking about?
Without responding to Roxy's question, I pulled away and got out of bed. Warmth gave way to the chill of the night air. Sorry. With that, I walked out of the room. My steps were unsteady. My head was swimming. I was headed for my study. I wanted to look back through that diary right away, to get some sense, however vague, of the way that old man had fought his battles. I was going to kill Orsted. It was the only way to protect my family. I'd do it, one way or another, even if it cost me my own life. Oh! As I entered the study, my eyes found the letter I'd been planning to mail out tomorrow, if all went well. I scratched out a few new lines at the very bottom of it. Maybe I wouldn't get to see Eris again after all. Chapter 4, Nanahoshi's Hypothesis. Suck up to the man-god without opposing him. Those were the words my future self said. To be sure, a lot of what the man-god said had struck me as dubious, especially the part about Orsted wanting to destroy the world, or the world falling apart if he died. I had no way of knowing where the truth ended and the lies began. Safe to say he hadn't been completely honest with me. Still, I couldn't let myself assume that the parts I wanted to be false were lies. If I jumped to the wrong conclusions, it might come back to bite me somewhere down the line. If nothing else, I had a feeling the man-god's irritation had been real. It seemed like my future self's intervention had taken him completely by surprise. That said, it had also brought him dangerously close to classifying me as an enemy. At this point, I didn't have much of a choice but to do what he told me. Opposing the man-god just wasn't an option here. He could launch all sorts of attacks at me from complete safety. Under those circumstances, there was no way I could protect everyone I cared about. Better to become his pawn, then. I couldn't stand the guy, and I didn't trust his promises in the slightest. But he was targeting us for a clear reason, and there was a chance he'd leave us alone once he was no longer in danger. The man-god had ordered me to kill Orsted. Putting the specific details aside, I found his story about my descendants joining forces with the dragon god to kill him relatively plausible. His goal would be achieved as long as Orsted or I died. This was our one way out. I had to protect my family. The man-god was the one who wanted them dead, but I had no way of getting at him. He could just sit in his big white void, sending an endless stream of danger our way. Orsted, on the other hand, existed somewhere in this world. It was hard to imagine I could kill him, of course. In all honesty, I didn't even want to try. But from what the man-god said, there was at least a chance it might work. One way or the other, I didn't want to see anyone die because I'd made the wrong choice here. The day after my encounter with the man-god, I dropped by the Adventurers Guild with Sylphie and mailed my letter to Eris. With that taken care of, the two of us headed straight to Perugius's floating fortress. We went our separate ways at the entrance, and I made my way to Nanahoshi's room. After being told to kill Orsted, I'd taken some time to think about who I might turn to for advice and assistance. She was the first person who'd popped into my head. That probably had something to do with my future self's words, consult Nanahoshi. But I also had the feeling she might know where to find them. Of course, I'd need to discuss the situation with Sylphie and Roxy eventually, but I wanted to think carefully about how I'd explain it to them. I needed them to understand that none of this was their burden to bear. I wasn't sure how I was going to manage that, honestly. Hey there.
Oh, well, you're back earlier than I expected.
It had been a few days since our last conversation, but Nanahoshi still hadn't recuperated fully. She was still bedridden for now, but there was a bit more color in her cheeks than before. "Here you go, Nanahoshi. Just a little get-well gift," I said, placing a basket of assorted fruit on her table.
Thanks. Those look good.
At this time of year, fresh fruit didn't come cheap at the local market, but I was about to ask for her help. It wouldn't hurt to mind my manners, no matter how businesslike our relationship might be.
You look rather serious today, I must say. Did something happen?
Nanahoshi was studying me with anxiety in her eyes. Was it that obvious? Well, probably. I was willing to bet my face was even paler than hers right now. I'll cut to the chase. I want to call in that favor you owe me.
Okay, what do you need from me?
Let me tell you what happened first. Just so you know, it's a pretty crazy story, but I promise you, it's the truth.
All right.
Slowly, carefully, I told her about the visit from my future self. I went through what he'd told me and summarized what I'd seen in the diary about the future. Then I moved on to my visit from the man god, his obvious irritation, and his claim that my descendants would join forces with Orsted to kill him. Finally, I told her that he'd ordered me to kill Orsted. I told her everything, in other words, I hadn't left anything out. When it was over, Nanahoshi sat silently for a moment, holding her fingers to her fourth year. Nanahoshi sat silently for a moment, holding her fingers to her forces.
Sorry, I need a minute to process all of this.
Yeah, he said he'd come from the future.
Is there any hard evidence of that?
There were comments in Japanese all over the diary. Also, he knew my name from my previous life.
What was it, incidentally?
I don't want to say.
Suit yourself. In any case, are you sure this man was telling the truth?
About what?
His identity, for one thing. Even if he was...
His diary was identical to the one I just created, and the first entry was exactly what I'd been planning to write down for that day.
That doesn't prove anything. He might have copied out the real diary while you were asleep.
She wasn't wrong, but this wasn't going to get us anywhere. For what it's worth, I think he was exactly who he claimed to be.
I see. Of course it's possible that the man god chose someone you'd find believable for the role.
So, what? You think the diary was all made up too? And he was just pretending to be upset in that dream?
I wouldn't go that far. I'm just wondering if you
Absolutely not.
You're planning to follow his orders, though.
What choice do I have, Nanahoshi? Nanahoshi sighed quietly, and then, with something like resignation in her eyes, she took the conversation down a slightly different track.
To be honest, Rudeus, I've heard a bit about the man the...
Really?
Yes. It was just after he nearly...
Oh, right.
I didn't get any details, but he said that he was going to kill them.
So Orsted really was after the man god, and he knew he wasn't capable of killing him just yet. Was he waiting for my descendants to be born? Or maybe for the fifth and final dragon general to appear? Either way, the man god wanted to stop him before it was too late. It all seemed consistent enough. The more I thought about this, the more plausible the man god's words seemed. Could he really have come up with lies this convincing on the fly? Despite his irritation, it was possible he'd planned it all out beforehand and simply faked his anger. But I just couldn't see myself figuring out which of his claims were false. Did it really matter what his real goals were, though? Not right now. Not to me.
In any case, why are you coming to me with this? Aren't there other people you should have turned to first? It's not like I can do anything to help you.
My future self told me to consult you.
I see. What did he have to say about me, exactly?
I found myself at a loss for words. Should I really answer this question, tell her she might fail at the last moment, and give in to despair? The diary hadn't contained any specifics, and my future self had been vague at best. Maybe it was better to be honest, though. If she knew there was a good chance of her research failing, she could brace herself for that outcome in advance and look for ways to avoid it. He said, "You're probably going to fail at the very last stage of your research." Then, Hoshi's eyes widened in surprise. After a moment, she pressed her lips together tightly and shook her head.
That's not what I was asking. I wanted to know if...
Well, I guess you died at some point, so he couldn't ask you. But he thought you might know where to find Orsted. He also said you spend a lot more time thinking through stuff, so you might be able to come up with another plan.
Stuff? Like what?
I don't know, the man god's real goals? Probably. Then again, I'd sort of established that already. The thing about world peace was probably a load of crap, but I could believe that he was attempting to prevent his own death. Of course, there was a possibility that was just another intricate lie.
Would you mind letting me have a look at this diary?
Sure. I handed over the battered old book. Nanahoshi flipped through the first few pages and grimaced.
This is going to take a while to get through. Your handwriting's terrible, for one thing.
Yeah, it took me 2 days to read the whole thing.
Oh, right. Can you loan it to me for one day then now?
You think you can finish it that fast?
I'm a quick reader. I'll get through it by this evening.
I was tempted to just point her to the more important parts, but there was a chance she'd pick up on something crucial in the less relevant entries. It was probably better to be patient. Okay then, I'm gonna go get a little rest. I haven't been getting much sleep lately.
All right, come back later tonight, or whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Nanahoshi. I rose and left Nanahoshi's room. As soon as I stepped outside, I could feel a weight being lifted off my shoulders. I was experiencing some genuine relief. That seemed a little odd. Did I trust Nanahoshi that deeply? No, it wasn't that exactly. She was just the one person I could talk to about everything, even the things I couldn't tell Sylphie or Roxy. I didn't care about her so deeply that I felt the need to hide painful, ugly truths from her. Maybe that was what allowed me to turn to her for help with problems. I was a pretty cold person sometimes, wasn't I? I glanced out the hallway window and noticed Ariel, Zenoba, Cliff, Sylphie, and Perugius discussing something or other out in the courtyard. Luke was standing a respectful distance behind them. Sylphie had positioned herself in front of Ariel and was talking directly to Perugius with her head held high. It was hard to believe she'd ever been that shy, bullied little kid back in Buena Village. Still, according to my future self, Ariel was going to fail to gain Perugius' support before returning home to Asura, where she'd be defeated. Sylphie would accompany her, and all of them would die. I probably needed to lend them a hand. I'd accepted that possibility back when I married Sylphie. First things first, though. My top priority at the moment was dealing with the man god. I turned from the window and headed back to the room I'd been given, hoping to get a few hours of sleep. When I woke up, Sylphie was lying by my side. Her face was always adorable when she was asleep, and it was only inches away from mine. It got my blood pumping right away. I didn't remember going to bed with her. She must have slipped in at some point after I was already asleep. Maybe she'd tried to wake me up. Maybe she'd wanted to ask for my advice about dealing with Perugius. I felt a little guilty I hadn't been available. I gently lifted her arm off my waist, patted her on the head, and then got out of the bed.
Rudy, give me a kiss.
This girl said some cute things in her sleep sometimes. Normally it would have put me in the mood for a little evening tumble, but I was too preoccupied with less enjoyable thoughts at the moment. I fixed my bedhead with my hands and left the room as quietly as I could. The windows in the hallway revealed a sky full of stars. I'd slept into the night. As I walked along the hall, I idly wondered if the presence of those stars meant this universe looked something like my old one on the cosmic scale.
Might I ask where you're going at this hour?
A masked man surprised me as I turned a corner. Hello there, Romefi.
It's quite late, as I'm sure you know. Let me repeat myself. Where are you headed at this hour?
I was going to see Nanahoshi. Is she still awake?
I imagine so. She requested a pen and paper not long ago.
Ah, good. Thanks. I continued on my way, my heart beating a little faster than usual. Did spirits never sleep, or what? They weren't human, so maybe they didn't need to. Must be nice having your security guards active 24 hours a day. That reminds me, They listen in on every conversation that happens in this castle, right? That presumably meant that Perugius already knew about everything I discussed with Nanahoshi this afternoon. Since he hadn't dropped by to discuss it with me, I had to assume he was deliberately staying out of this for now. But he wasn't the only one monitoring me either. The man God had to be watching as well. Feeling increasingly unnerved, I made my way through the quiet halls to Nanahoshi's room. Light was filtering from the edges of her door. She was still awake, then. Just to be polite, I knocked before entering.
Who's there?
It's Rudeus.
You're coming by this late. Your wife might get the wrong idea.
Want me to come back tomorrow instead?
No, I don't mind. Come on.
I opened the door and stepped inside. Nanahoshi was still lying in bed, but there were sheets of paper scattered all around. Wow, bit of a mess in here.
Well, I'm in the middle of trying to piece some things.
Did you figure anything out? I asked, picking up a random piece of paper as I sat down in the chair at her bedside.
I'm not positive, but based on this diary and what you told me earlier, I've managed to come up with a hypothesis.
Oh? What kind of a hypothesis?
For many years now, I've been asking myself why I was brought here to this universe, this place, and this specific time.
Did that have anything to do with the topic at hand? I didn't see the connection, but it couldn't hurt to hear her out.
At first, I assumed it wasn't just me. I thought my...
Should I be asking why she assumed that? I already had an idea, though. It involved my very last memories from my previous life. In my attempt to save 3 high schoolers who were about to be run over by a truck, I'd pulled one of them to safety, losing my life in the process. Nanahoshi and her other friend hadn't been hit, but she was still transported to this world. I could understand why she thought her friend might be here as well. They were standing very close to each other in that moment.
But no matter how thoroughly I searched this world, I couldn't find him anywhere.
Isn't it possible he died immediately upon arrival?
I did consider that, but why would he have died?
Was that why she tagged along with Orsted's travels? Was she hoping to find her friend? There was probably more to it than that. Yeah, I guess you're right. Nothing happened to me either.
Are you certain about that?
Now she'd lost me. I didn't remember being in any danger as a kid. In Buena Village, I had Paul and Zenith taking care of me, and things were generally peaceful.
Listen, when you told me that your future self had arrived in the past without all of his internal organs, it occurred to me that I might have come here from the future as well.
Wait, what? So you think this is the same universe we were in before, and this is just the distant past?
No, I'm not saying anything like that. I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to explain this. You remember that the cause of the displacement incident has yet to be established, yes?
Didn't that happen as a side effect of your arrival here?
Right. But theoretically speaking, merely teleporting someone into a field shouldn't have caused a disaster like that.
True enough, but she'd been brought here from a different world. That probably had something to do with it, right? I don't know, Nanahoshi. When my future self traveled back here, it didn't have any side effects like that.
Yes, it did.
What? Seriously? What?
Half of the man's internal organs were missing, if you'll recall.
Yeah, but wait a second. Was she saying that his organs had disappeared for the same reason all those people did during the displacement incident?
Traveling 50 years back in time exhausted your...
Well, not completely. He was still able to use a few spells.
But he grew weaker every time he did so.
Nanahoshi tapped at the cover of the battered diary to emphasize her point.
Now let's suppose that I was brought here from 100 years in the future. Presumably, that would require at least 2 times more mana than you possess.
For some reason, she sounded very convinced of this. I had a feeling she might know a bit more than she was telling me.
Traveling back 50 years in time cost you part of your body. Where did those organs go exactly? Were they just left behind in the future? Well, surely you wouldn't get off with losing a few organs in that case. Would your entire body get left behind instead? That doesn't seem right, does it? I'd imagine you would end up somewhere else. The same place those organs disappeared to, that is.
And where's that supposed to be?
I have no idea, I'm afraid, but I think this is all part of a balancing process of sorts. After all, the mana of this world obeys the law of conservation of energy.
Does it? Huh. That's news to me.
I don't have the evidence to back this up, but I imagine many people disappeared in the displacement incident. Thousands, or perhaps tens of thousands. Now tell me something. In the immediate aftermath of that incident, did you notice anything wrong with you? Perhaps you were very low on mana for no apparent reason.
In the aftermath of that incident, Eris and I had met Rudeus, and we'd ended up in the city of Rikarasu working as adventurers. I didn't remember anything strange happening. No, wait. Hadn't I felt strangely sluggish in those first few days as we made our way to Rikarasu? I'd gotten worn out really easily, too. That was similar to the way it feels when you're running out of mana. 1 second, Nanahoshi. If you're right about this, why did some people disappear but not others?
Based on what the man god told you, I'd speculate it had something to do with the strength of their destinies, or what have you. The laws of causality might have protected some people more strongly than others.
What? Now you're just speculating?
This entire theory is completely speculative. I did say it was just a hypothesis, remember?
My destiny was strong, and that went for the women in my life as well. That was why Sylphie and Eris had come out of the incident safe and sound. Maybe it ran in the family too. That would explain why my parents and sisters had survived, or maybe I was just slapping a convenient reason on a bunch of random events. Okay, so what's the bottom line here? That you came here from the future?
That's not the point. It's more that... how am I supposed to explain this?
Nanahoshi was practically tearing her hair out in frustration at this point. She seemed to be having a really hard time putting her ideas into words.
I'm guessing that at some point in the future, something established a chain of causality leading to the man god's downfall.
A chain of causality.
Right. And in order to prevent that future from being realized, the man god began to meddle with your life. Think back for a moment, please. When was it that you first encountered him?
The first dream had occurred right after the displacement incident, but at the time, the man god said that he'd been keeping his eye on me for a while beforehand. Hold on. Yesterday, he'd claimed he only discovered me during that disaster. It was so hard to pick the truth out of all his lies.
Did you remember seeing anything odd in the period before the displacement incident?
Before the incident? Actually maybe so. I'd seen that strange red gem floating in the sky outside Saros' sex tower back in Fit-Toa.
Looks like something came to mind. Do you know...
How was I supposed to know that? No, wait. Didn't Saros say something about this at the time? Come on, come on. You can do this, you've got a good memory in this body, right? He said, I found it 3 years ago. Yeah, that sounds right. I guess it was back when I was 5 years old or so.
Did anything happen to you at that age? Did you...
Well, I guess that was when I got to know Sylphie. But that's the only thing that comes to mind. Suddenly, a few pieces of the puzzle snapped together. At the age of 5, I met Sylphie, and we grew close. As a direct result of that, Paul sent me off to Fit-To, where I met Eris. On my 10th birthday, Eris and I were very nearly intimate. And the next day, the displacement incident had occurred. Immediately after that, the man god got in touch with me. Was that the exact point when a future where he died came to be?
Originally, you weren't meant to exist in this world, correct?
Sure.
Why do you think you were reincarnated in it then?
How am I supposed to know?
I think it happened for a reason, personally.
What reason?
Someone sent us here, Rudeus, both of us. They sent us to this era as a means to change the future.
Who is this someone supposed to be?
Someone from the future who wanted very much to see the man god die.
This was starting to make my head hurt. Was she implying we were all puppets, dancing on the strings of someone who wasn't even born yet? I can't make any sense of this, Nanahoshi. What are you getting at here?
I think that you and I are necessary parts of a world in which the man god one day dies.
Well, that cleared up exactly nothing.
It's possible that these descendants of yours summoned me here in order to create some tool or weapon they needed to destroy the man god. And until I play my part by doing so, I can't return to my old world. Anything I try will fail.
How does that make any sense?
I was brought here because I have to make that tool someday.
All right, let's see if I can sort out what she's saying here. The man god was going to die at the hands of Orsted and my descendants, who would join forces in the future. For that to happen, I needed to have children. From the moment I met Sylphie as a child, the two of us were destined to get married and have a baby. The same probably went for Roxy, judging from the man god's focus on her. Maybe it even applied to Eris, since the displacement incident had occurred right after we'd nearly done some naughty things. In the future, where my family was wiped out, the man god was victorious. But it wasn't enough for my descendants to join up with Orsted, either. They probably needed something else. Something Nanahoshi would one day create. And that was why she'd been summoned here 10 years after I had. In other words, we hadn't just been summoned, but sent back in time as well. Maybe someone had done this intentionally. Maybe it was some strange byproduct of the principles of causality. We had no way of knowing from our end. But if Nanahoshi's hypothesis was correct, we'd reach this world as the result of actions taken by someone in the future. Did that mean those events had happened before we came here? Had the future come before the past? Did the chicken come before the egg? Well, whatever. All right. I think I understand your hypothesis.
That's good to hear. Sorry I'm so clumsy at
It was an interesting theory, to be sure, but it wasn't a very reassuring one. Basically, it means the man god was probably telling the truth. My descendants really will team up with Orsted to kill him someday.
Yes, I suppose so.
Okay then, let's get back to the main topic.
What main topic?
How I go about killing Orsted.
Oh,
Nanahoshi frowned and fell silent. Even if your theory's accurate, the man god is trying to avoid that future, and he succeeded at least once. There might be destiny at work here, but the future can still change.
I just don't think it's a good idea, Rudeus. You'd be better off talking to Austin and trying to find some...
Stop, Nanahoshi. The man god might be listening in on this conversation right now, for all I know. Biting her lip, Nanahoshi glanced at the ceiling. Sorry, wrong direction. The barren world's below us. This destiny thing is an abstract concept. I can't see it and I can't count on it. My destiny might be strong, but that didn't protect my father or my mother. I'm not saying the man god will do anything to me right away, but he can see the future. If he realizes I'm going to betray him, I might come back home to find Aisha dead. Or he could set up some tragedy to happen a few years down the line.
But the man god can't manipulate everyone, right?
I'm not so sure about that. Who knows exactly what he's capable of? I wouldn't be surprised if he's been playing down his powers.
I suppose you're right.
And anyway, it's not like Orsted has a chance to beat him right now. Assuming the man god isn't lying, he needs my descendants to help him out, or else he's going to fail.
Yes, that's true. Assuming the man god is...
I have to protect my family. The man god is the one who's trying to kill them, but I have no way to fight him. At least Orsted's somewhere on this planet. I don't know where, but there's at least a chance to find him.
There's no guarantee the man god will keep his word. Yeah.
Orsted is the dragon god. Based on my diary, he's probably the only one who knows about the secret art to reach the barren world. If I kill him, that knowledge will be lost. The man god won't have any reason to come after my family.
You know, even if Orsted dies, there is a chance your descendants will find a way there on their own.
So what the hell am I supposed to do then? My words came out more loudly than I'd expected. I hadn't meant to yell at her. Nanahoshi flinched, but pressed on with her argument regardless.
Talk to Orsted, like I said. He might be able to help you out of this.
You think I didn't consider this already? Look, if I joined forces with Orsted, I'd be making a permanent enemy of the man god. You know what happens if I try to fight him on my own? Well, look at that diary. I don't stand a chance. This time I'd have Orsted on my side, but what does that change? He can't win either. The only reason he had a chance is because of me showing up and throwing things out of whack, right? That's the whole reason the man god is coming after me. Orsted's fighting a losing battle right now, You think he's going to have the time and energy to help protect my entire... Is he that powerful? You want me to make an enemy of the man god before I even know?
But Orsted is more trustworthy than the man god.
How can I know that for sure? Sounds like he might be trying to destroy the world. I mean, I'm not saying I believe that completely, but look, the man god was deceiving me. He pretended to be helping me out for years and years. What if Orsted did the same to you?
Well, I can't deny it's possible at least.
I paused to study Nanahoshi's face. There was a hint of fear in her eyes. I don't trust the man god, but I can't trust Orsted either. I knew how powerless I really was. I could believe what my future self had told me, that I didn't stand a chance against the man god. I could imagine, in vivid detail, following in that old man's footsteps. I could see myself losing everything I cared about and dying a miserable death. It was hard for me to be optimistic about fighting Orsted either. The only outcome I could picture was an ugly, brutal defeat. But the man god did say my destiny was strong. Maybe he'd seen a future in which I could win this fight somehow. That was my last ray of hope. Listen, Nanohoshi, my future self told me to consult you. I'm guessing that means you know some way of getting in touch with Orsted.
Well, yes.
Help me out, please. I need to kill him.
But he's done a lot for me.
Nanahoshi's eyes darted away from mine. She was clearly flustered. Orsted was the first person she met after her arrival in this world. He probably saved her life many times over, just like Rudeus had saved me when I was stranded in the Demon Continent. It would be hard to betray someone you owed that much. I probably couldn't have done it either. I wouldn't betray Rudeus even if it cost me my life. I understood what she was feeling, and normally I might have given up for the sake of maintaining a good relationship with her if nothing else. But I wasn't going to back down this time. It just wasn't an option. Listen to me for a minute, Nanahoshi Shizuka. Before I came to this world, I was a complete waste of oxygen. I don't know what you think of me as I am today, but in my previous life, I was someone you would have despised, and for good reason. But you know what? I was reincarnated here, and I made a fresh start. I screwed up plenty of times, and it cost me dearly sometimes, but I learned from those experiences, and now I have a family that means the world to me. I just want to keep them safe. I got out of my seat. Sitting in a chair was no way to plead with someone. There was a proper way to do this sort of thing. I went down on my hands and knees. I pressed my forehead to the ground and made myself as small as possible. Please, I'm begging you, help me. The floating fortress floors were cold and hard. For all I know, the man god could have a change of heart tomorrow. I don't want to waste any time. I don't want to come home one day and find my family lying dead on the ground. I don't want to lose any of them. Please.
What are you doing? Stop it!
Namahoshi got out of bed. She grabbed my shoulder and forcibly pulled my head off the ground.
Okay, I'll help you. Just...
There was exhaustion and sadness on her face. I felt a small stab of guilt. At the same time, though, a part of me was dancing with joy. Sometimes I kind of hate myself. Thank you, really. Maybe I was making a huge mistake here. But honestly, what choice did I have? Chapter 5, A Letter from Afar. The Sword Sanctum, in the far west of the Northern Territories, was a place where the air rang with fervent battle cries and the sound of wooden swords. Most of the people you passed on the street wore martial arts uniforms or something similar and carried practice swords and hand towels. Sometimes you might see a visitor in the dress of a swordsman, but those who chose to stay for an extended period usually adopted clothes designed specifically for training. At the very back of this little town was a vast, snowy field that led to a great training hall. Today, a woman in swordsman's clothes stood in that field, near the entrance to that hall. Her light shirt and black pants were clearly chosen with mobility in mind. Over these, she wore the traditional overcoat granted to sword saints of the sword god style. There were 2 swords at her waist. Even at a distance, the longer of the 2 was distinguishable as the work of a true master. From the quality of her weapon alone, it was clear she was a highly ranked student of the sword god style, one of the few who had reached the rank of sword king, in fact. Her intimidating appearance, combined with her long, brilliant red hair, was reminiscent of a lion. 9 out of 10 people who saw her in the street would have immediately stepped out of her way on instinct. She was the Berserker Sword King, and her name was Eris Greyrat. At the moment, however, she was looking down at her imposing outfit with a slightly anxious expression.
Nina, are you sure I look all right?
Yes, you're fine. You look very impressive, I promise.
Standing in front of this red maned lion was a young woman in a martial arts uniform who wore her dark blue hair tied back neatly. Her name was Nina Phalion, and from the tone of her voice, she was starting to get a little exasperated with her rival.
Really, Eris, the outfit's perfect. You're the very picture of a sword king.
But Rudeus used to say he liked my frilly clothes better.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Nina let out a long-suffering sigh, then continued the conversation as best she could.
Eris, how exactly do you expect me to know what your boyfriend wants to see you wearing?
Oh, yeah. I guess you wouldn't.
Would you please stop looking at me with pity in your eyes? You know, Gino and I. Never mind about that.
With a firm shake of her head, Nina jabbed a finger into the air.
Look, it's not like you're going to find dressy clothes like that around here anyway. You do remember where we are, right? If you really want some frilly outfit, you'll just have to buy one in the city.
Yeah, true enough.
From all appearances, the matter was now settled. But this was the 5th time today they'd basically had this exact conversation.
Anyway, I don't know why you're obsessing about your outfit right now. No matter how fast you go, it'll be a good month on the road before you reach Sharia. I'd worry less about the clothes and more about making sure you're clean and presentable when you see him. Make sure you take a bath, comb your hair, and put on a little perfume. You do know men don't like stinky women, yes?
Rudeus does. He never seemed to mind when I got all sweaty.
Well, I suppose he'd have to be understanding if he found you attractive. If he found you attractive?
Actually, I even caught him sniffing my sweaty old underwear a couple times. He seemed to be enjoying it.
What? The man's a pervert.
Eris scowled slightly at this remark.
Rudeus isn't a pervert. He's just a little naughty.
He was getting off on your body odor. Eris, that's the definition of a pervert.
Eris brought her nose to her armpit and took a few experimental sniffs. Her clothes were new, and she'd taken a bath in preparation for her journey. All she could smell was the faint scent of soap.
He's not a pervert.
Well, if you say so. Sorry, I suppose I went a bit too far.
The two of them fell silent for a while. Now and then their hair stirred as a cold wind blew across the quiet, snowy field.
Gillian's sure taking her time.
I suppose the students might be squabbling about who gets to come along.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, Eris, I have heard a few rumors about your boyfriend now and then.
What kind of rumors?
They say Rudeus Greyrat can make his own eyes pop out.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Also, he supposedly likes girls with flat chests.
Nina glanced over at Eris as she spoke these words. Eris looked down at herself as well. It was rare to hear the word voluptuous applied to a swordswoman, but in her case, the glove fit.
That won't be a problem.
Her voice sounded confident enough, but Eris's face looked a little paler than before.
Let's see, what else? They say he conquered a legendary labyrinth, destroyed an immortal demon king, and put up a good fight against one of the 7 great powers.
No kidding? Well, that's Rudeus for you. I'd expect no less.
Just like that, the color was back in her cheeks. She even looked a little flushed. It made her happy to know that Rudeus had been working hard to grow stronger, just like she had.
The man is monstrously strong, I'll give him that. Normally, I wouldn't have believed a word of all this.
Eris puffed up with pride and let out a little snort of pleasure.
I know. He's amazing.
However, there are also some less pleasant rumors out there.
Like what?
Like he's a notorious playboy, who struts around with a different woman every other day.
At these words, Eris's smile suddenly stiffened.
Oh, and it sounds like abuses his strength to get anything he wants? Look, Eris, this is just a possibility. But maybe he's forgotten all about you?
As soon as these words left her lips, Nina's left hand shot up to block her face, and a split second later, Eris's fist slammed into her palm. While she'd managed to stop the punch, the fury of Eris's gaze was too much for Nina to withstand. She averted her eyes awkwardly.
It's just a rumor.
Eris pulled her fist back and folded her arms. She widened her stance and threw out her chest, twisted her mouth into a frown, and sulkily turned her head.
Oh, look, Ghislaine's finally here.
4 horses were approaching slowly from the direction Eris had glanced in. A beast-folk woman was leading them. This was the Sword King Ghislaine de Doldia. While she had to be nearly 40 years of age by now, her body was as lean and muscular as ever. Ghislaine led 2 of the horses by the reins. Just a little behind was a young and beautiful woman who led the other 2. While she wore plain traveler's clothing, her long, silky hair and shapely face were more than enough to entrance all who saw her. This was the Water King, Isolde Quell. The water god herself, Raidelia, was perched atop one of the horses she was leading.
Sorry for the wait. Were you 2 fighting again?
It was Nina's fault.
Replied Eris, pouting sullenly. Nina just shrugged her shoulders.
I see.
Ghislaine murmured, an amused smile flashing across her face.
Not much of a send-off. Gal didn't even bother getting out of bed.
The old woman on the horse, easily the most formidable person in this imposing group, was looking backwards at the hall with a grumpy expression.
I wouldn't read anything into it, Master Rider. The sword god is something of a lightweight, I'm afraid.
Good? You think he's got a hangover from last night? Good grief. The man should know his limits at his age. You know, Nina, this might be a golden opportunity. Why don't you go challenge him to a duel?
Nina smiled awkwardly at the old woman's teasing.
I think I'll have to refrain. I intend to become the sword god in a somewhat more sportsmanlike fashion.
Oh, you're such an earnest little thing. Don't worry, dear, you'll surpass that old sourpuss in no time. Just keep doing what you're doing. But for what it's worth, you might want to keep an eye on the folks below you on the ladder instead.
The ladder? Well, in any case, I'll do my utmost to make good use of everything you've taught me.
Nina bowed her head respectfully to Rada, then turned to face Isolde.
Might I ask where you 2 are off to next? You'll be traveling with Eris partway, correct?
That's right. We're returning to the Kingdom of Asura. I've been invited to serve as an instructor of swordsmanship at the Royal Palace.
Ah, I see. It's going to get a bit lonely around here without you.
Isolde smiled gently at Nina's words.
Do make sure to pay me a visit if you happen to stop by the kingdom. I'll show you around the capital.
No thanks. If a country girl like me stumbled into Sura, I'm sure all your fancy city folk would just point and laugh.
Nina said, scratching her nose bashfully.
And if anyone laughs at us, we can just cut them in half.
Alarming as these words were, they did remind Nina exactly who the 3 of them were, and she chuckled softly, laughing at a sword saint, let alone a sword king or a water king. Generally wasn't the best of ideas. You'd either have to be a truly formidable combatant in your own right, or a complete and utter fool.
All right then, Eris. Shall we be on our way?
Yeah, let's go.
Isolde smiled at Eris's energetic reply and hopped onto her hearse. Eris followed suit, mounting hers so roughly that it shook itself in displeasure. She slapped it on the neck, and it quickly settled down again.
Be well, everyone.
Called Nina, surprised to find that there were tears in her eyes. Her thoughts were drifting through the years since Eris's arrival here. Their first meeting had been a truly horrible one. Nina had been humiliated. and Eris subjected her to many more embarrassments in quick succession. But the frustration of those failures had driven Nina to improve. And when Isolde arrived, her gentle words and tactful advice had been of great help as well. If it weren't for them, Nina would no doubt have still been stagnating in the middle of the pack of sword emperors. She might never have risen into the realm of the sword kings. In other words, she owed them.
Heya, folks. Got a delivery for ya. Mind signing for me?
Nina's melodramatic musings were abruptly interrupted by a cheerful, carefree voice. Trying to contain her irritation, she turned in its direction. A somewhat dopey-looking man in a thick winter coat was standing in the snow nearby, puffing white clouds of vapor with every breath. It appeared he had absolutely no idea who any of them were. Rather than waiting for them to respond, he reached into his bag and retrieved an envelope.
Oh, good grief. Who is it from?
Well, looks like it's addressed to Miss Eris Boreas Greyrat.
Eris frowned suspiciously at this, but at the man's next words, her eyes shot wide open.
It's from a Mr. Rudeus Greyrat.
Rudeus?
Eris instantly leapt from her horse and snatched the envelope from the man's hands. Just as she was about to rip it open, however, he hurriedly grabbed her by the shoulder.
Hey, wait a second there. I need you to sign, or they won't pay me for the delivery.
Fine. Where do I sign?
Ah, right. Hold on just a moment, please.
The man reached into his bag and pulled out a pen in some sort of form, which he handed to Eris. She paused for a few seconds, clearly attempting to remember the letters of her name, then scribbled it in a barely comprehensible scrawl. The man studied these characters for a long moment and eventually managed to identify the letters Eris.
Okay then, thank you kindly. Boy, I wish every job paid this well.
He tucked the receipt back into his bag and headed back up the path in high spirits. Eris barely spared a glance in his direction as she got to work on the envelope. She was about to tear the thing open with her hands, but then she saw the words, Miss Eris Boreas Greyrat on the front of it, in what was clearly Rudeus's handwriting.
He must have been in a real hurry. I haven't used the name Boreas in years. Oh, wait. Maybe he doesn't know that?
She flipped the envelope around and studied the name written on its back, Rudeus Greyrat. His handwriting hadn't changed at all. The letters were carefully shaped, but always looked a little off somehow. A long time ago, she'd spent hours every day staring at this handwriting as Rudeus tried to teach her how to read. The memory made her smile. In order to preserve the envelope as best she could, Eris decided to open it at the top with her fingernails. Her first attempt had no effect, neither did her second. After her third try, she reached for one of the swords at her waist. Tossing the letter into the air, she drew her blade. Somehow, instead of slicing the envelope in half, her sword cut a tiny sliver from its very top. Eris caught both pieces as they fell back down, tossed aside the smaller one, and finally pulled the letter out. With an eager look on her face, she began to read it, and then she continued to read it. As she did so, her excited expression quickly gave way to one of profound irritation.
Eris? What does it say?
Eris didn't reply. She was still glaring fiercely down at the piece of paper in her hands.
Eris, are you listening?
Oh, shut up. I don't recognize some of these words, all right? It's just taking me a little while to read it.
I see.
You do it, Nina.
What? I can't read myself, you know?
Seriously, that's gonna come back to bite you someday.
Why are you lecturing me about this? You can't read it either.
As the two of them began to squabble, Isolde hopped down from her horse with a sigh.
Calm down, you two. I'll read it instead.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Said Eris, handing the letter over. Isolde began to read it slowly and carefully. At first, her expression was neutral, but as time passed, it began to grow stormier and stormier, and once she was finished, she cried out in a voice full of anger.
What is the matter with this man?
Huh? What? What does it say?
Oh, Eris,
You were training so hard all these years for him? You poor thing. St. Millis, take pity on this girl.
Isolde folded her hands and looked beseechingly to the heavens for a moment, then looked over at Eris with eyes full of sympathy.
Eris, you really ought to forget all about this man. Why don't you come along with me to Asura instead? It would be such a waste to give yourself to a scoundrel like this.
Look, will you just tell me what the letter says? Do you want me to chop you in half?
Hissed Eris, reaching for the swords at her waist.
Very well then. Here it is.
Clearing her throat, Isolde began to read the letter in a voice that rang with righteous outrage.
Dear Miss Eris, it's been quite some time, hasn't it? This is Rudeus Greyrat. Somehow, it seems 5 years have passed since we went our separate ways. Do you still remember me? I certainly hope so. I know I haven't forgotten you or the time we spent in each other's company. During our first night together, I swore to myself that I would stay with you forever. I fully intended to stand at your side for the rest of my days, supporting you through anything life sent your way. But when I woke up in the morning, I found myself alone in bed. You were already gone. Devastated by your disappearance, I sank into a deep depression. The next 3 years of my life were bitter, lonely ones. Nothing I did felt meaningful. I felt as if I was wandering through a heavy fog. Of course, I don't blame you for any of this now, but I hope you can at least understand how miserable I was at the time. As for the reason I'm writing you this letter, well, let's just say a certain someone recently mentioned you to me. Up until now, I was convinced that you'd abandon me to travel the world on your own. But this individual claimed I had misunderstood your feelings completely, that you'd never stopped caring for me or thinking of me. I have 2 wives now. Both of them pulled me out of my despair, in moments when it might have crushed me. While I may have misinterpreted your actions, that didn't make my pain any less real, and they were there for me when I needed them most. However, if it's true that your heart remains unchanged, if you truly want to be reunited with me and spend your life with me, I'm prepared to accept your feelings. I have no intention of leaving my 2 existing wives, so you would become my 3rd. I understand you might find this proposal unacceptable, or perhaps even infuriating. If so, you have every right to punch me to your heart's content. I'd appreciate it if you let me off with 2 or 3 good swings, though. Of course, my hope is that it won't come to that. Even if you're not willing to join my family, I hope we can at least become good friends. Sincerely, Rudeus Greyrat.
Eris wasn't saying anything. She wasn't moving either. From all appearances, she'd been turned to stone. Isolde took one look at her and promptly resumed her earlier tirade.
Well, there you have it. Isn't he awful? Having 2 wives is bad enough, and now he's casually offering to make you number 3. The man clearly has no respect for women whatsoever.
I don't know. It sounded like he was trying pretty hard to be considerate,
said Nina, peering at the letter with a thoughtful frown.
Considerate? It's the first letter he wrote her in years, and he didn't even bother to say I love you. He seems to think he'd be doing her a favor by marrying her. No, I'm sorry. I don't like this Rudeus Greyrat one bit.
Look, he thought Eris had dumped him, right? And he spent 3 whole years moping about it too. Isn't it partially her fault for wandering off like that?
Oh, please. He probably made all that up to make her feel guilty. He just wants her because she's a master swordsman with a nice body.
I don't know about that. Would you really risk keeping Eris around just to have a sexy bodyguard?
Nina was pondering the matter seriously. Isolde was squawking mad, and Eris was staring up at the sky, her arms still folded, her eyes no longer seeing anything at all. The sky above was blue, but her mind was a pure white void.
Oh, there's one more piece of paper in here.
It was at this point that Isolde realized she hadn't read the entire letter yet. Retrieving the final sheet of paper, she began to read.
Let's see. Ahem. P.S. As I write these words, I'm preparing to fight the dragon god Orsted to the death. I have no idea if I can win. It's possible I won't even be alive by the time this letter reaches you. But if I do make it back alive, let's talk things out.
By the time she finished reading out these words, Isolde's face had visibly stiffened. That went for Nina as well. Her expression was one of fear and awe. The mere idea of challenging the dragon god himself to a duel had turned her spine to ice. But on Eris's face and hers alone, there was a grin. Her eyes were alive, again burning with passion and determination.
All right, we've got to hurry if we're going to make it there in time. Let's move, Ghislaine.
Just like that, she kicked her steed into motion. It sprinted forward across the plain, kicking up snow as it went. Ghislaine hurried her own horse after it. They barreled past the courier who delivered the letter, sending him flying to one side, and disappeared into the distance in a matter of seconds. Nina and Isolde just stood there, staring after them, too stunned to even blink. Chapter 6. A month had passed since my conversation with the man god. I'd spent every day of it working on my preparations for the coming battle with Orsted. Killing him would not be easy, to say the least. He was the single strongest person in the world. Which meant, of course, that he was far more powerful even than formidable figures like Atafe, Perugius, and Ruyashard. And I couldn't defeat any of those three. I had a less than zero chance against Orsted in a fair fight. With that in mind, I'd worked out 3 general priorities. 1. I needed to create the magic armor. 2. I wanted to secure some allies. 3. I had to find a strategy that might work. First and foremost, there was the magic armor project. Based on what I'd read in that diary, once I had it, I could wield physical power comparable to that of the 7 great powers. My future self had grown dramatically stronger after creating it. It seemed outright essential. The first thing I'd done was buy a small cabin on the outskirts of the city of Sharia. I'd initially hoped to build the thing in Perugius's floating fortress, but he denied me permission. I'll explain why later. I turned to Cliff and Zenobia for assistance with the project. The 2 of them immediately agreed to help without pressing me for a detailed explanation. I wanted Cliff to create a control system based on that of the Zalif prosthesis, and Zenobia to design the armored shell and its propulsion mechanisms. When I explained the general concept of the magic armor, their eyes lit up with excitement. It didn't take long for them to understand what I had in mind. Powered suits weren't really a thing here. But I guess boys will be boys anywhere you go. Once Cliff and Zenobia were on board, I asked Sylphie and Roxy for their help as well. Roxy acted as the project's general overseer and supervisor. I could conceivably have filled that role myself, but I was the only person capable of creating and modifying the ultra-hard plates of rock that would serve as the thing's actual armor. It was a job that took a lot of time and a lot of mana. I didn't have time to worry about too much else. Sylphie was capable of silently casting earth magic. Also, her research into the displacement incident had left her unusually knowledgeable about magic circles. The girl was pretty damn smart and talented in general, for that matter. Since she could handle almost any task, I wanted her as a general assistant to Roxy, running around to help out wherever she was most needed. When I'd asked her for her help, she said, "Of course, I'm on it," with a big grin on her face. It felt like the first time in a while I'd seen her look that happy, actually. She'd probably been keeping some less than happy thoughts to herself recently. That made me feel more than a little guilty. Once the magic armor project got rolling, I started to spend some time on item 2, finding allies. My initial plan had been to face Orsted alone, but I knew how powerless I was compared to him. I didn't have my future self's long years of combat experience or his knowledge of magic. Unfortunately, I didn't track down anyone who seemed capable of evening the odds. Badigati was nowhere to be found, and neither was Ruyardyrd. Perugius, unsurprisingly, turned me down flat. His reasons for doing so weren't exactly comforting either.
There are 3 people in this world you should never try to fight. The technique god, the fighting god, and the dragon god. Even among those 3, Orsted is particularly powerful and particularly ruthless. Your determination to protect your family is admirable, and I would love to ask him a few questions about the man God. But I shall be staying out of this. I'd rather not die before Laplace returns, you see.
I'd gone in optimistic about my chances of coaxing him into helping, but it just didn't work out that way. At least he wasn't actively trying to stop me either. I'd have to take that as a win. Apart from Perugius, I simply could not locate anyone who seemed capable of standing against Orsted. Zenoba was incredibly strong and highly resistant to physical damage, so I'd briefly considered bringing him along, but Atov had been capable of damaging him with her attacks, despite his blessing. I had to assume the same went for Orsted. The last thing I wanted was to get Zenoba killed. He was my best friend. Of course, I didn't want to see Cliff or Elenilas die either. The more I thought about it, the less I wanted to drag anyone else into this fight. I did consider Eris momentarily. It was hard to guess exactly when she'd get here. Based on that diary, though, she was probably even more powerful than I'd be with the magic armor complete. Was there any chance she'd join me in the fight against Orsted? It wasn't even a fair question, really. Before I started dragging her into my battles, the two of us needed to sort out our past and where things stood between us. I had no right to expect her help until that happened. With my search for allies at something of an impasse, I redirected my attention to the third item on my list, crafting my strategy for the battle. I needed to run through this fight carefully beforehand. I would be fighting on my own, and I absolutely had to kill my opponent. Given those two premises, I actually had a large number of options available to me. If there were no allies nearby, and I kept my distance from my enemy, I could easily make use of powerful spells with a wide area of effect. The bigger the spell, the more difficult it would be for him to evade. Something like lightning, which concentrated all its power into a smaller area, might be more effective at dealing damage, but I had a feeling that Orsted would simply dodge it. All things considered, barraging him with wide area attacks from a great distance seemed like the smartest approach. The damage would add up eventually, and if I stayed far enough away that he couldn't perceive me, he wouldn't be able to interrupt me with disturbed magic. There was also a chance that I could catch him unawares and smash through his defenses when his guard was setting up a trap. Might not be a bad idea. I could lure him to a deserted area, where he'd find something that would catch his attention, something that would explode the moment he picked it up. I could use that as my signal to fire magic at him from a distance. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like the right approach. The question was, how would I go about luring him to this location? Maybe I could take Nanahoshi as a hostage, or send him a message from the man god. Both seemed like they might work. That said, I wasn't optimistic enough to think that my initial long-range attacks would be enough to take him down. There was a chance it might work, but I needed to assume otherwise. Once he found his way to me, it would come down to a close-range fight in my magic armor. I wasn't sure how well my mind could keep up with an ultra-high-speed battle, but there was no point worrying about that until I'd actually taken the magic armor for a spin. As I thought all this over, I found myself remembering my childhood in this world. For a while, I spent a lot of time working on a plan to beat Paul in a fight. I'd been hoping to surpass him while he was still in his prime. In the end, though, I never defeated him even once. Still, the tactics I'd worked out back then were deeply rooted in my mind. I knew how to use my magic in coordination with the movements of my body. I knew how to move in 3 dimensions. No matter how overwhelming my opponent might be, my basic approach wasn't going to change. I needed to keep him at a distance, blasting him with attacks while he tried to catch me. I needed to keep the pressure up and force him to make disadvantageous decisions. That was how I fought when I was at my best. Of course, Orsted had disturbed magic in his worm gates. There were no doubt other tricks up his sleeve as well. It felt safe to say that this would never go according to plan. The trap and the ambush were a good start. What else did I need to beat him? It was crucial for me to really think this through. I had to consider every possibility, then focus on the more promising ideas. In all honesty, I knew my mind wasn't functioning too well right now. I was impatient and scared and increasingly obsessed with my task. It would probably have been wiser to take things more slowly and try out some of my ideas on an experimental basis. The single best plan would probably have involved cornering Orsted slowly and methodically over a period of 10 years or so. But if I were that lackadaisical about this, the man-god might change his mind, and I might come home to find I'd lost someone I loved. More than anything else, I was terrified of that. And one night, as my preparations were proceeding, he came to me again. I found myself in a white space. Presumably, I was at the center of the barren world.
Hey there! Looks like things are coming along nicely, huh?
Yeah, I'll fight Orsted, just like you asked me to.
Now, I didn't ask you to fight him. I just asked you to kill him.
You sure look like you're in a good mood today. Are you that happy to have me dancing on your strings?
Come on, this is exciting stuff. Even I don't know what's gonna happen next.
Glad you're enjoying yourself. I wasn't expecting to see you again so soon, though. Does this mean you just made up that stuff about wavelengths aligning or whatever?
Oh, yeah. Total nonsense.
You could at least pretend to feel a little shame. So I'm guessing the part about I can only appear to certain people was a lie too?
Yep, pure fiction. But hey, it must have been a nice ego boost to hear you were the chosen one, right?
Well, whatever. Within the next few days, I'll tell Sylphie and Roxy that I'm planning to fight Orsted. If he ends up killing me, my kids will grow up knowing he's the man who murdered their father. That should be plenty of reason for them to hate him, so...
Sorry, that's not going to be enough to knock Destiny off track. You need to kill him, or I'll erase your descendants no matter how long it takes.
Do you have to phrase it like that? Well, whatever. In any case, it's going to take me a while to complete the magic armor. We're breaking new ground here, and Cliff's struggling with some of the theories involved. I'm trying to push things along as fast as I can, but I think it'll be another 6 months or so.
Cliff should already be capable of designing magic circles to...
Mushoku Tensei Vol15 by Rifujin Namagonote, cast by Artale Studio. If you are interested in creating your own audio drama like this, please visit artale.ai and use promotion code ARTALE to activate your account. Now, enjoy the story.
Strengthen the rocks. You should focus solely on making the joints in the external shell, since that needs to be as tough as possible. Also, when you're designing the magic circles for the torso, make sure you use the Alistair method rather than the wind system. That should help you pass the tough parts.
Ah, no kidding?
Tell Zenoba you want the thing to be a bit more on the bulky side as well. You'll burn more mana that way, but it'll let you layer more magic circles underneath the main ones. Design the circles on the lower layer to repair the more important ones if they get damaged. That should allow you to keep moving even if the thing's half destroyed.
Huh? Wait. I didn't know you were an expert on this stuff.
Well, I am the man god, you know. I'm familiar enough with the fighting god's armor to give you a few pointers.
You know, that reminds me, don't the people of the world call you the god of men instead? Is there any significance to that?
The god of men is something like a nickname of mine, I suppose. It just caught on for some reason, I guess. Man god is my proper name.
Why do I feel like you're lying to me yet again? Not that I really care that much about your name. More importantly, do you think I can win? Let's say I build the magic armor, set a trap, and launch a sneak attack. Do I have a chance?
Ooh, good question. I mean, you've got as much mana as Laplace to work with, right? If you go all out, I bet you'll put up a good fight.
That's not super reassuring. Mine being less vague? I wouldn't mind if you dropped me a few more hints on strategy.
All right then. Get yourself some magical implements, the kind that fire off an offensive spell when you feed them mana. Shouldn't be too hard to find those in Sharia. Right, they're designed to only consume a little bit of juice, so ordinary folks can use them, but it's easy enough to modify them so they use more mana, just like that Zalif prosthesis of yours. Make yourself a few really high-powered ones, the sort only you could use. You'll get some new attacks for your arsenal, and a way to work around disturbed magic.
Oh, wow. Gotta say, you're giving me some really detailed advice for a change.
Well, you're throwing yourself into this more enthusiastically than I expected. Why wouldn't I help out? I really do want Orsted dead, you know?
Can't shake the feeling there's something more to this. For all I know, if I design the magic armor according to your instructions, it'll explode the moment I try to activate.
Whose life would you like to bet on that intriguing theory? Go on, pick Aisha, Norn, Lilia, or Zenith.
Chick!
Like I've told you, I can't see Orsted's future. That means I can't see the outcome of your battle either. I don't know what's going to happen to you.
Okay, and that means you don't know for sure that I'm gonna lose, correct?
Exactly.
By the way, if you can't see Orsted's future, how do you know that he's going to join forces with my descendants in the future?
I can't see the man himself, but I can certainly see my own future. It involves your descendants, some man I don't recognize, and Orsted surrounding me.
You can see anything you're going to experience personally, huh? So what happens after they show up? They just beat you to a pulp or what?
Yep, they kill me rather brutally. I don't put up much of a fight.
Look, why is Orsted after you anyway? You sure you didn't do anything unspeakably cruel to him?
Oh, who knows? I don't recall doing anything to the man himself at the very least.
Either you don't want to tell me, or you genuinely don't know. I guess it doesn't matter which. It's not like I can trust anything you tell me anyway. You lie constantly.
Now that's a little harsh. The only malicious lie I ever told you was that little fib about the basement, you know?
All your advice up until then was just laying the groundwork for that moment, right?
Yeah, true. But you know, if you hadn't gone and gotten Roxy pregnant, I wouldn't have needed to do that.
Why the hell couldn't you have just told me not to have a kid with her then? Why did you have to make this so complicated?
It wouldn't have worked. No matter what I said, you would have knocked her up. That's just the way it had to be, I guess. No matter how many times I tweaked and prodded at the future, it just didn't want to change.
Maybe so, but you could have at least... Never mind. Sorry for yelling at you. In the end, I did marry Roxy, and I did get her pregnant. Now that I think about it, some of the things I did to end up here felt a little strange to me. Out of character, even. I guess that's how this destiny thing works, and I get why you want to change it. I'll do what you want, man God. I'll follow your orders. I'll kill Orsted. But before I do that, there's something I need to say to you.
What's that?
Once Orsted is dead, I want you to leave me alone for the rest of my life. Don't meddle with my family either. Please. I want you to promise me that.
What's this? And here I thought you didn't trust my promises anymore.
I don't. Of course I don't. But I have to believe you're not lying about this one thing. If you're not going to let me off the hook no matter what, maybe I'll just join up with Orsted and start working against you.
Oh, go right ahead. I can't kill you, sure, and I can't kill him either. But you don't want to see what I can do. You'll find out exactly what it means to make an enemy out of me.
You might be bluffing right now. Maybe threatening me is the best you've got. I mean, you had to manipulate me for years before you could get me to make one little mistake. For all I know, you might be talking tough because you're terrified to have me as an enemy.
Please. You've got a very strong destiny, so I was just trying to nip things in the bud as subtly as possible. Oh, forget it. It's not like you're going to believe anything I say, right? Go ahead, underestimate me all you want. Bye now. You might live to regret this.
No. Sorry. I take it back. Give me a minute here. Look, all I want is a little reassurance. You say you're going to kill my family if I lose to Orsted. But even if I win, it feels very possible that you'll turn around and kill them anyway. That's not great for my motivation, you know? I need to know there's some point in me doing this.
I suppose you're right. Here goes, then. In the name of the man god, I swear to honor my promise. Once you defeat Orsted, I won't have anything to worry about. That means I won't need to bother you ever again. I won't speak to, harass, or attempt to harm you, your wives, your mother, your sisters, your descendants, or your pets.
You really mean that, right? I'm going to hold you to it.
Sure. If you'd like, I'm even willing to offer a little helpful advice if your family ever finds itself in a crisis.
I've had enough of your advice for one lifetime, thanks.
Oh yeah? Well then, good luck with Orsted.
With those final words echoing in my ears, I felt myself sink into unconsciousness. Another month flew by. The construction of the magic armor was coming along smoothly. Following the man god's recommendation, we'd made it larger than I originally intended. The thing stood a good 3 meters tall, about half the size of an aura battler, come to think of it. The magic armor described in my future self's diary had been more like an ordinary bulky suit of armor. This version would be significantly bigger. Increasing its size had led us to several discoveries. Not only was it easier to design this way, but we could also increase its durability. The man god's advice had been completely legitimate, in other words. When I passed along his other suggestions to Cliff, his eyes lit up with understanding, and he immediately threw himself into his work with redoubled vigor. In no time at all, he resolved the thorniest problems he'd been struggling with. I'd expected the project to take at least half a year, but our progress was accelerated significantly. At this rate, we'd be done in another month or so. The entire job would be over a mere 3 months after we'd begun. Under any other circumstances, I might have been full of gratitude toward the man god. It was ironic in a way. My future self had created the magic armor in order to kill him, but now he'd helped us create it. When I thought about it that way, I couldn't help wondering if he really was up to something devious here. But Cliff and Zenoba were the ones actually making the thing. I trusted them completely. I'd also hunted down the magical implements the man god had mentioned. Roxy had helped me out with this. We'd found what we were looking for quickly enough. The implements in question were small wands activated by the word fire, which launched beginner-tier offensive spells at your target. They were a fairly popular, affordable product, and weren't particularly powerful. You'd sometimes find thieves who lacked other ranged attacks carrying them. In some, the man god said that if we modified these so they could withstand my mana output, it would be possible to make them fire off the sort of stone cannon spells I frequently used in battle. As I considered this, an interesting idea had popped into my head while we were modifying their power. What if we also made it so they could fire a continuous stream of spells, so long as they kept receiving mana? And what if I then bundled 10 or so of them together? I'd have myself a Gatling gun of sorts, capable of pumping out a constant stream of deadly projectiles.
Your spells are very potent, but you can only fire one of them at a time. This might be a way around that limitation. Fortunately, I happened to meet an excellent creator of magical implements recently. Let's see if they'll take the job.
That same day, Roxy arranged a meeting with her acquaintance. I was slightly surprised when she turned out to be an elvish woman. There weren't many of her race in Sharia. Elves have pretty faces as a general rule, but hers was caked with soot, and her fingernails were black with grime. She was clearly devoted to her job.
Are you sure about that? If I make this thing like you described it, every shot is going to take way too much mana. It might drain you to death if you're not careful.
I hadn't even considered the idea. Was that what the man god had in mind when he suggested this? Stone cannon didn't consume much mana, but this thing would be capable of firing off tens of thousands of them in a single day. I couldn't bring myself to worry too much about it, though. If I ran out of mana without killing Orsted, I was as good as dead either way. And I needed to push myself to the very limit if I was going to stand a chance against him. That won't be a problem. Please make it exactly as I described. The elf shrugged but took the job nonetheless. I would have my short-range weapon. Now I just had to pray it would be capable of damaging Orsted. On our way back from the workshop, Roxy struck up a conversation.
Rudy, I don't know who or what you're planning to fight, but will you really need a weapon like that to defeat them?
No. I'm sure I'll be fine either way. I was just trying to be reassuring, of course. It didn't work.
You used to be such an honest, sweet kid, Rudy, but lately all you do is lie and hide things from me.
The words stung quite a bit. In all fairness, though, I'd done plenty of lying and deceiving even when I was a kid. Sorry, Roxy.
Oh, that's all right. I'm hiding something from you too, after all. But you know, Rudy, I am at least discussing that matter with people I can trust. I'm not saying it has to be me, but I hope you're confiding in someone. You're not trying to face this all alone, are you?
Nah, don't worry. I'll be okay. I had a good idea as to what Roxy's secret was. Lately, she hadn't been letting me do anything too active in the bedroom. It was partially because I wasn't asking, but I noticed she was actively steering me away from making the suggestion. Given what I'd read in the diary, she was probably starting to suspect that she was pregnant. She wasn't getting morning sickness yet, as far as I knew, but I'd noticed that her sense of taste seemed to be changing. When was she planning to break the news? Maybe she was waiting for the second trimester, or maybe she was planning to keep quiet until I dealt with my current mission. Either way, I couldn't help hoping that she'd speak up before I went off to fight Orsted. That way, we could have a big party to celebrate. It might be my last chance to throw one. The following day, I paid a visit to Nanahoshi. I'd half expected to be refused entrance to the floating fortress, but they let me in surprisingly easily. Given how scared he was of Orsted, Perugius was being pretty lenient toward me. I ended up asking Silveril about this and received a prompt reply. I kinda thought you wouldn't let me in after last time, you know?
Lord Perugius always shows great compassion to those going to their deaths. He has no objection to you saying your farewells to Miss Nanahoshi.
Apparently, they were already convinced that I was going to lose, and also die. I was being allowed into the castle as an act of charity. I wasn't complaining, though. It beat getting chased away at the door. I found Nanahoshi looking much livelier than before. Someone had brought a number of her possessions from the university up here, so her room was a bit less barren, too. The Ruigerd figurine sitting on her windowsill was presumably a gift from Zenoba, and the small decorative cross next to it must have come from Cliff. That was thoughtful of him. It never hurts to have something to pray to when you're struggling. I never had much interest in any gods or relics in my previous life, but my opinions on the matter had evolved a bit. So basically, my preparations are coming along nicely. I think it's time to talk about how we're going to lure him to me.
All right, but first, as I'm sure you're well aware, Orsted is extremely powerful.
I know.
He's also ruthless. I'm not sure how he picks his targets, but when he intends to kill someone, he doesn't hesitate.
I spent several years traveling with him, and I never saw him break a sweat in battle. He kills giant dragons in a single Bifest. The single proved this.
Can you stop trying to scare me, Nanahoshi?
I'm sorry, but I do want you to reconsider this. In all honesty, it's madness, plain and simple.
Look.
I know. I'm sorry. Well, now she had me feeling even more anxious than before. Did I really have a chance of winning here?
What I'm trying to say is, I don't recommend
Sure, yeah. I can't see myself beating him in a fair fight no matter how much I enhance my strength and speed.
If I were you, I would lure him to a specific spot, and then attack him with your magic from a distance, while remaining hidden, of course.
Anything else come to mind?
Let's see. Oh!
What? Did you think of something?
I'd almost rather not say... But I did decide to help you, I suppose.
Right. Nanahoshi swallowed loudly before continuing.
Poisoning him might work as well.
Poison, huh? Detoxification magic could deal with a wide range of toxins, but there were certain diseases and poisons which no known spell could counteract. It was hard to know how effective most of them would be against a monster like Orsted, of course. But there had to be something out there that could harm him. Maybe Ariel could hook me up with something suitable. I had a feeling that everyone in the Asuran royal family was well versed in this kind of thing. Okay, so I set a trap, poison him, and then attack from a distance. Ah, right. Nanahoshi, could I use you as a hostage?
A hostage? I suppose so. I'm not sure how concerned Orsted would be with my safety, though.
Yeah, that's a good point. We don't want him figuring out you're working with me either. No reason to put your neck on the line, too.
Oh, right. I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah. Let's not do the hostage thing. The man-god was using my family as hostages at the moment. I knew it was a highly effective way to manipulate someone, but it was also a great way to get them furious and highly motivated. That could seriously backfire on you in battle. Any other ideas, Nanahoshi?
I don't know. Did you read a lot of manga back in Japan? There were plenty of powerful enemies in those, right?
I don't think those strategies are going to be too helpful here. The two of us talked it through for a while longer, managing to think up a few somewhat promising ideas. Without exception, they were sneaky, underhanded tricks. It was hard to imagine them doing much against someone as formidable as Orsted. Then again, even the deadliest techniques are just a combination of devious little maneuvers. I had to believe I'd get some results from all of this.
Well then, good luck.
Thanks.
Try to come back alive, will you? I don't think I'll ever get home with...
By the time I left Nana Hoshi's room, we'd worked out our plan to lure Orsted to me. Next, I turned to Ariel for help. When I explained that I wanted poisons no spell could neutralize, she grimaced openly. But nonetheless, she set up me with an introduction to a local underworld organization that she was on good terms with. This group was larger and more sophisticated than your typical pack of bandits. It had grown into something more like a gang or a mafia family. Drug smuggling was their main business, but they also made and sold a variety of poisons. When I got in touch, they directed me to a dilapidated house in a quiet corner of Sharia, where I was escorted to a specific room in the basement. The air was thick with sweet-scented smoke. My contact, a man with one eye, was already waiting for me inside.
Hello there, Mr. Grey Rat. Nice to meet you.
I hadn't introduced myself, but the man clearly knew who I was. With a big, crude grin, he got right down to business.
So tell me, what can I do for you today? You want to make him really suffer for a while, or just keel over right away? Maybe something to make the legs go numb, or swell up some magician's tongue? I've got a little potion that can drive any woman wild too. Perfect for when things start to get a bit perfunctory.
Based on that spiel, his inventory ranged from poisons to anesthetics and aphrodisiacs. That suited me perfectly. I'll take everything you've got.
Everything? Now, I'm not complaining, but that's gonna get a little pricey.
That's fine by me.
Ooh. Okay then. Guess you really want someone dead. Oh, what about that love drug? You want that one too?
Well, a thought flitted through my mind. What if Orsted's immune to poisons? Killing him with a poison no spell could cure was a simple enough idea. Anyone could have thought of it, and Orsted was cursed to be hated by everyone he encountered. It seemed likely he had some countermeasures in place against this sort of thing. Maybe he was naturally resistant, or maybe he had some kind of miracle potion that could purge any toxins from his system. Yeah, I'll take that too.
Sure thing. You want to see that cool, collected beauty of yours melt into a puddle, huh?
My wife's sweet as a kitten in bed, actually.
No kidding? This is Silent Fits we're talking about, right? Kinda hard to believe. Honestly,
I had no real reason to believe an aphrodisiac would work on Orsted if poison didn't, but it couldn't hurt to try. Anything that could affect him or distract him was worth a shot. With that thought in mind, I bought everything the man had to offer. In between all of my other preparations, I also took the time to scout out potential battlefields. I intended to fight him on my own, with no one else around. That meant going outside the city, of course. It had to be a spot outside Sharia's walls where no one was likely to go, that offered opportunities to set up traps. I did some research into potential candidates at the Adventurers Guild, and when I found a place that sounded suitable, I headed out to study it in person. I also had Elenilis introduce me to an adventurer acquaintance of hers, who gave me detailed lectures on laying and creating traps. The adventurer in question was apparently a former assassin, with knowledge of many different techniques for luring people to their deaths. Many of these traps exploited weaknesses of human psychology in devilishly clever ways. I got some hands-on experience with a few examples. Even though I knew what to expect, I still ended up blundering into them. Personally, I wasn't convinced Orsted would fall for any of them, but they would still give me something of an advantage. On a different note, Elenilis gave me some personal lessons on close-range combat. She was an expert at fighting in the front lines of a party, and even though I wouldn't say she was that strong in a one-on-one duel, she'd been alive for many years, and she had a wealth of practical experience. In her time as an adventurer, she'd faced opponents more powerful than herself on numerous occasions, and despite her relatively average physical capabilities, she'd come out alive every time. That made her knowledge valuable. In that sense, it was a real pity I had no idea where to find Rudeus, considering everything he'd been through. But there was no point dwelling on it, really. Perugius wouldn't be helping either. I just have to manage. Over the course of these lessons and strategizing sessions, I tried my best to visualize how I would move around and fight inside the magic armor. My basic method of attack would be a constant barrage of stone cannon spells, fired from the numerous magical implements mounted on my armor. I would probably want to be moving backward for the most part. While keeping up a steady barrage, I could also slow Orsted down with spells like Quagmire and Deep Mist, and if he eventually slipped up, I'd be ready to take advantage. That seemed simple enough. Simple was good. Finally, I unsealed the basement and prayed at my altar for victory in the coming battle. 2 months had passed since I'd killed that diseased mouse. If the words of my future self could be trusted, the virus or germ that caused petrification syndrome would be long dead. Still, I asked Roxy not to enter the basement for now, and required anyone who did to wash their hands and rinse their mouth immediately afterward. It was more for my own peace of mind than anything else. Since I was already down here, I decided to poke around and see if I could find anything that might prove useful against Orsted. The magic items in the basement were mostly pieces of junk. They'd also been frozen solid by my Frost Nova 2 months ago, but this apparently hadn't damaged them. They all seemed to function as before. We had a hat that would splash water on your head when you tried to take it off. A helmet with a gem mounted on the front that shone like a flashlight when you put it on. A little box that would belch clouds of smoke when you opened it. A short sword with a blade that turned to rubber when you tried to stab something. A pair of shoes that would emit a foul odor every time you took a step in them, etc., etc. I tossed them into storage just in case, but I didn't see how any of them could be useful, other than as props for some kind of street performance. Maybe that little box could provide a smokescreen at least. Theoretically, it would be nice to somehow replace all of Orsted's equipment with these stupid things, but I couldn't see how I would manage that. Also, he'd probably just take them off. I grabbed a few of them at random anyway. You never knew what might come in handy. Before I left the basement, I turned back to my altar and said another silent prayer for victory in battle. It's always best to ask twice for the really important stuff. All of my preparations were coming together, and yet the lingering sense of anxiety in the back of my mind never went away completely, not even for a moment. Chapter 7. Readying for Battle. Time marched on, indifferent to my concerns, and soon enough another month had passed. The Magic Armor Mark I was now complete. Somehow we'd finished the project in only 3 months. I'd thrown a lot of money at it near the end, hiring additional workers to cover the more monotonous tasks, which had definitely sped things up. Just as I'd anticipated, the thing ended up standing about 3 meters tall. However, its entire frame was covered in thick crude plates of armor that I created, which lent it a surprisingly squat and stout appearance. It wasn't exactly stylish, in other words. You got in from behind. There was a hole in its back shaped for a human, which you basically just climbed into. Once you were feeding it mana, it acted as an extension of your own body, so you could manually close the rear armor over you. That section of armor also contained a special magic circle that would automatically eject you out of the back if you spoke the correct command. We'd mounted the Gatling gun on the right arm. The modified magic implement now automatically fired off stone cannon spells whenever I wanted it to. When I fed it as much mana as I could, it was capable of shooting my very deadliest stone cannon 10 times per second. It would reduce your average monster to a bloody mist in the blink of an eye. This was my main plan for coping with Orsted's disturbed magic. On the left hand, we'd mounted a stone of absorption. For the most part, I was planning to ward off Orsted's spells with disturbed magic, but it was possible I wouldn't have the time if things got too hectic. This stone could dissipate magic that had already been completely formed. It would let me deal with any spells I wasn't quick enough to stop preemptively. I had a feeling it might come in handy. We'd also given it a shield that could serve as a melee weapon of sorts. I wasn't bad with the sword myself, but I knew I couldn't compete with Orsted on that front. I'd concluded that it would be better to focus on defense at close range, and honestly, smacking him with a giant, heavy slab of rock might do more damage anyway. The best defense was a good defense. It was the same concept as a tank, basically. However, I'd also mounted one of Paul's old weapons at the tip of the shield. It was the magic sword I'd given to Aisha, rather than the one Norn now owned. I didn't know if its ability to ignore an enemy's defense would work on Orsted, but it was worth trying everything I could. The end result wasn't exactly majestic. The magic armor was painted in a camouflage pattern, which felt almost as out of place here as the bulky Gatling gun on its arm. The huge, clunky shield with a blade at its tip didn't have much aesthetic value either. At the moment, the thing was lying face down on the ground in a field on the outskirts of Sharia. It was so incredibly heavy that I'd have to get inside and feed it mana just to stand it up.
Now that's a fearsome suit of armor.
Indeed, indeed. Its sheer bulk is quite imposing.
I don't know. I might have gone with something a little sleeker.
Agreed. To be perfectly honest, I think it looks absurd. It's like some kind of monster, Rudy. Couldn't you have gone with a different color?
Cliff and Zenoba nodded in satisfaction as they examined the finished product, but the women reacted much less favorably. Maybe this sort of thing just appealed more to boys. On the other hand, Julie was studying it with a fairly satisfied expression on her face, so that clearly didn't apply across the board. If I made it back in one piece, I'd have to see what Aisha and Norn thought. Well, whatever. We hadn't designed this thing to look cool. Okay, everyone. I think it's time to get started with the final test run. Sylphie, Roxy, Zenoba, Cliff, Ellenalize had all come out to watch. Julie and Ginger had tagged along as well. Nanahoshi wasn't here. She'd agreed to help lure Orsted to me, but her main objective was still to return to her own world. As a precaution for her safety, we were pretending I had coerced her into cooperating with me. For that reason, she couldn't be seen with us right now. She was probably studying summoning magic with Perugius back at the floating fortress at the moment. Of course, there was a chance that Orsted would end up killing her regardless. But when I mentioned this to her, she'd nodded keezily and accepted that risk.
All right. I suppose I'll look on from a safe distance then.
With those words, Roxy headed over to the chairs we'd set up for our spectators, taking Julie with her. Her baby bump wasn't conspicuous just yet, but you could see it if you looked for it. She probably wasn't going to be able to hide it much longer. Hopefully she'd make the big announcement soon. Then again, going off to battle with a pregnant wife waiting for you at home was a classic way to get yourself tragically killed. Okay, no, don't even think about it. The more anxious you get, the harder it becomes to focus. I was going to win this fight. My wife was going to have her kid, and I was going to name them. And then I was going to get started on making baby number 3. That was what my future looked like. Yeah! Okay, I'm going to climb inside it now. Sophie, Zenoba, and Elenialize, I want all 3 of you to come at me at once. Cliff, you just keep your eye of identification active, and let me know if you notice anything.
Sure, Rudy.
Certainly, Master.
Sylphie and Zenoba stepped forward at once, but to my surprise, Elenialize raised her hands in the air and backed away instead.
I'm sorry, Rudeus, but I think I'll just be spectating today. I'd rather not get injured.
Come to think of it, that diary said Elenialize had gotten pregnant at some point. When I studied her physique carefully, I thought I could make out the beginnings of a bump. I'd been a little thoughtless, inviting her to scrap with me. Right. Wouldn't want anything to happen to the baby. Why don't you go sit with Roxy?
What? The baby? Elenize, are you pregnant?
Well, my curse has been inactive for some time now. So yes, I probably am.
Your curse is inactive, but we've been, carrying on as usual.
That we have?
Wait, It's not Rudeus's baby, is it?
Are you trying to make me angry, Cliff?
But, I mean...
If it's that hard to believe, why don't you take a look yourself? Maybe that eye of yours will tell you something.
Cliff pulled his eye patch aside and stepped closer to Elenialize, and then closer still. He ended up with his face about 2 inches from her lower abdomen. From all appearances, he was attempting to stare right into her womb. This close-range examination didn't seem to be sufficient, though, as he reached out and began to slowly lift her up her skirt.
Oh my! You do know we're in public, dear?
Could you just be quiet for a minute, please?
All right, all right.
To be fair, it did look more than a little obscene the way he was crawling under that long skirt of hers. Maybe I could try something like this with one of my wives later. Sylphie would definitely look good in one of those. This probably isn't something I should be spending my mental resources on right now.
It's true.
Cliff re-emerged from under his wife's skirt, his face as pale as a sheet. Apparently, the eye of identification could serve as a pseudo-ultrasound. Maybe the word pregnant had popped up in his vision or something.
What now? What do we do?
Oh, nothing in particular.
But it's not an easy process, is it? And there are all sorts of...
Cliff, I've been through this many times already. I'll be fine. You just let me handle things, and I'll give birth to a healthy baby.
Cliff's face wasn't getting any less pale. He seemed shell-shocked at the suddenness of it all.
In any case, that wasn't very tactful of you, Rudeus. Did Roxy let the cat out of the bag?
No, she didn't say anything. I just had a hunch, I guess.
I see. Well, hopefully you can understand why I'd rather not get involved in any brawls at the moment.
Of course. Sorry about that. Elenialis fluttering one hand in the air and walked off toward the spectator area, where she took the seat next to Roxy. The two of them immediately struck up a conversation. I had a pretty decent idea what the topic might be, considering that Roxy was rubbing a hand over her own stomach. The two of them must have gotten pregnant at almost exactly the same time. Momentous as all this was, however, we had other things we needed to focus on at the moment. Okay, everyone, back to business. Let's get this test started. Sylphie and Zanoba nodded, their faces turning serious. An hour later, I called the test complete. The magic armor had performed stupendously. My top speed felt something like 200 kilometers per hour. I could jump several meters into the air with ease, and my punches hit hard enough to leave an impact crater on the ground. Sylphie struggled to land a single spell on me, and any magic that did hit me just bounced back. I couldn't even feel Zanoba's fearsome punches. In fact, he ended up breaking his hand on my armor and screaming in pain. The project was a success. I was capable of dealing physical damage to a blessed child like Zanoba, which meant I would be capable of harming Orsted as well. For once, it felt like I'd managed to achieve my goal completely, without screwing up even once along the way. That felt nice. Then again, I couldn't really take the credit here. Zanoba and Cliff had made the project possible. Maybe this was something like what it felt to fight under the protection of Battle Aura. This kind of power was intoxicating. I was beginning to understand why the likes of Perugius and Atoph had grown so arrogant over the years. Had I evened the playing field enough? Did I stand a chance now? Yeah. It could work. I can do this. One way or another, my preparations were now complete. That same evening, Roxy finally made the big announcement.
I think it's about time I told you, everyone. It seems I'm pregnant.
She spoke up just before dinner. Norn happened to be at home that evening as well, so the whole family was present.
Congratulations. How very exciting.
Lilia was the first to react. Although she usually kept her emotions somewhat hidden, there was a big smile on her face right now, and it looked completely genuine. For a moment, I thought it might have something to do with her feelings about her own daughter's position in the family, but it seemed more likely that Roxy had consulted her in advance. That would also explain why the meal on our dinner table looked a bit fancier than usual.
Congratulations, Roxy.
Sylphie's reaction was similar. Either Roxy had gone to her for advice, or she'd had a hunch this was coming. She accepted the news easily, with a warm smile on her face. For some reason, the sight of that smile hit me with a flash of déjà vu. In a sense, this was similar to the day when Lilia revealed her pregnancy. There were many differences, of course. Zenith and Lilia were here, and I hadn't exactly been cheating with Roxy. Well, it might have started out that way, but at least we'd talked things through as a family and worked something out. Sylphie had accepted Roxy. Unlike my old man, I wasn't going to get a slap in the face from my furious wife or see my mistress break down in tears. We'd skipped right to the happy ending part.
Rudy? Do you have any thoughts?
Evidently a bit unnerved by my silence, Roxy turned to me with an apprehensive look on her face. There was only one thing to say, of course. I'm incredibly happy. Thank you, Roxy.
Huh? What are you thanking me for exactly?
Roxy tilted her head quizzically to one side with a confused half smile. She didn't seem to understand my reaction, but she didn't look upset either.
There you go again, Rudy. He said the same thing to me when I told him about Lucy, you know?
Did I? Yeah, maybe I did. Why would that be my default response, though? Well, I'm glad you're pregnant with my baby, and I'm glad you felt comfortable telling me about it. It feels like proof that you've truly accepted me, I guess.
I thought I'd proven that to you quite some time ago, but wow.
I leaned forward, picked Roxy up, and pulled her into my lap. I usually tried not to get too lovey-dovey with her in front of Sylphie, but today was going to be an exception. You've given me all sorts of gifts, taught me all sorts of things, and helped me many, many times. And now, just to top it off, you're even going to have a baby with me. I don't know what to say other than thank you. I'm so grateful that I met you, Master Roxy.
Goodness, it's been a while since you called me that.
Gently, I ran my hand over Roxy's belly. She was probably about 3 months into her pregnancy by now. I could feel a definite bump. I'd been through this once already with Sylphie, but it still felt kind of surreal.
Listen, Rudy, you're my husband now, and I wanted to have a baby with you. If you feel the need to praise me, I think something like well done or good work would be more appropriate.
Wouldn't that sound kind of arrogant?
Come on, please. Can't you let me have my way every once in a while?
Well, okay then. Well done, Roxy.
Oh, it was nothing, really.
As she spoke these words, Roxy pressed her head against my chest and snuggled in. She sure seemed to be taking this calmly. I felt like Sylphie had been a little more nervous. Then again, it seemed like Elenilis and Lilia both knew about Roxy's pregnancy in advance. Maybe she'd reassured herself by talking to lots of different people about her situation. Maybe she'd turned to them because of how busy I'd been lately. The idea made me feel guilty. I was turning into one of those absentee dads, too busy to pay attention to his family. Although it wasn't like I was off climbing the corporate ladder or anything. I squeezed Roxy tightly in my arms, pressed my face to the back of her head, and buried my nose in her hair. Her scent was as wonderful as ever. It really put my heart at ease.
Oh, Rudeus! Can you try to contain yourself? I'm gonna lose my appetite.
I glanced over. Her face was as red as a tomato.
Come on, cut them a little slack. Roxy is always so considerate, you know? She deserves some affection tonight.
For some reason, she was leaning forward on the table with her chin in her hand and a smirk on her face.
You're just cranky because Rudeus isn't giving you any attention lately, right?
What? No! I am not! Look! I mean, things are a little complicated, right? Think about how Sylphie and Lucy must feel.
I just think they should keep this sort of thing behind closed doors.
Oh, you're not fooling me. You know, brother dear, you really should make the time to catch up with Norn. She's very popular at school lately. Just the other day, some boy stopped by the house to leave her a letter.
Aisha, who said you could tell him about that?
Huh, so Norn had attracted her first swarm of admirers? Well, she was adorable and hard-working too. The boys had good taste, I'd give them that. Someday down the line, she'd probably get a boyfriend, get married, and leave my house for good. I wanted to be supportive, of course, but if she fell for some no-good playboy, it would be hard not to intervene. I tried to picture Norn bringing home some kid with bleached blonde hair, pierced ears, and a teardrop tattoo under one eye. Your little sister's teaching me what true love really is, man. Can we, have your blessing? It didn't seem very plausible, fortunately. But if things did turn out that way, I'd have to try and smile politely before freaking out. Do you have anyone you're fond of yet, Norn?
Anyone I'm fond of?
Oh, of course not.
So there was someone in the picture, huh? Nothing unusual about that. She was getting to that age after all. Whoever he was one lucky kid. Okay, I get the picture. If things start getting serious, you make sure to bring him over to meet the family.
Are you even listening to me?
Once she brought the boy back home, I'd have to size him up carefully in Paul's stead. That and dispense a few fatherly threats. The words, "You'll take my little girl away over my dead body." We're going to get bellowed at some point.
Anyway, what about you, Aisha? You're always babbling about how happy Rudeus will be when you show him that rice from the garden. I was gonna make a big announcement about that later. You're horrible, Norn. Serves you right.
Wait. Did she just say what I thought she said? Hold on, Aisha. You harvested the rice from the garden?
Well, yeah. I think it's been a little too cold, though, so I didn't get that much. But if I get replanting now, by fall we should...
Replanting? Does that mean you harvested seed rice, too? It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, I did. You're acting a little weird, Rudeus. What's the matter?
I'm acting perfectly normally, I assure you. What about next year? Will we have another crop next year?
Well, as long as you make more of that soil with your magic, sure. It grows a lot better in that stuff.
I gently picked Roxy up and sat her down on the floor next to me. Then I rose to my feet, moved to the side of the table, and kneeled 3 steps from Aisha's chair with my arms spread wide. Well done, Aisha.
Why... should I be... jumping into your arms right now or something?
Aisha slowly walked toward me while glancing repeatedly in Roxy's direction, then hopped gingerly into my embrace. I grabbed her from either side, hoisted her into the air, and started spinning her around. Woo! It's rice, Aisha! Rice! I could finally eat rice again. It was a minor thing compared to Roxy's pregnancy, but I loved rice with a passion. Nothing could compare to a big, plump mound of fluffy white goodness, especially when you paired it with some nice, salty grilled fish. Soon enough, I could make that happy dream a reality. As I spun Aisha around and around, a fresh surge of joy spread through my body. Roxy and I were going to have a baby. Lucy was going to have a little brother or sister about 2 years younger than her. The kid would be half-miggered, of course. Hopefully she wouldn't get bullied or anything. What color would her hair turn out to be? Would Lucy be a good big sister? Hopefully they'd get along with Norn and Aisha too. I can't wait. What should we name? Oh, right. There's a taboo about that, isn't there? A whole bunch of other thoughts swirled through my head in quick succession until I couldn't even keep track of them anymore. After Roxy's announcement, we had ourselves a modest little celebration. The food was nicer than usual, and the conversation around the table was cheerful and energetic. Norn told us stories from her time in the student council. Aisha happily reported that the people at the city market were starting to learn her name. Lucy burst into tears at all the noise, and Sophie comforted her expertly. Lilia served the food quietly, with a gentle smile on her face. Zenith ate silently, but was clearly in a good mood. Roxy was sulking after my overreaction to Aisha's news, so I had to work hard to mollify her. One of the courses that evening consisted of salted rice balls. Aisha had made these personally. When I asked why she'd chosen rice balls in particular, she explained that Nanahoshi had told her how to make them some time ago. I had to assume that it was the only recipe she knew off the top of her head. The girl clearly hadn't spent much time in the kitchen. Then again, the only recipes I could come up with on the spur of the moment were for equally basic stuff like rice ball. In any case, Aisha's first attempt at handmade rice balls were round and on the smaller side. The first planting had been more of an experiment than anything else, so she hadn't harvested that much rice. Still, there was enough for everyone to try one. Nobody else around the table looked particularly impressed with the flavor, but I savored mine joyfully. Aisha had worked very hard to harvest that rice, and she'd pressed it into a ball with her own little hands. How could the result be anything but delicious? Tears streaming down my cheeks, I slowly chewed and swallowed every bite. The experiment had been a success. That meant we could expect a larger harvest next time. Aisha was going to plant more rice than before, so the next rice balls she made would be bigger. There was no guarantee I'd be around to eat them, though. I've got something I need to tell you, everyone. Once everyone had finished their meal, I finally spoke up, then paused to look around the table. My sisters and my mothers looked startled. My wives seemed to be bracing themselves. I took the time to look all of them in the eyes, one by one. Very soon, I'm going to be fighting someone who's incredibly powerful. I'm sure you've noticed that I've been acting rather oddly for the last 2 months. Thank you for not pressing me to explain. I know it wasn't easy for you, and I'm sorry I can't explain in detail. There's a good chance I won't win this fight. When I spoke these words, surprise and anxiety flashed across my family's faces. I pressed right ahead anyway. This might be my last meal at this dinner table, in other words.
Do you have to fight this person? Isn't there any other option?
No. None that I know of, at least. The man god hadn't stopped by since advising me on how to build the magic armor. Knowing him, however, I had to assume he'd been keeping a close eye on me all this time.
But you said you might not win, right? Why would you do something like that? It doesn't...
Norn, listen. Norn was the most flustered and confused person in the room. That was perfectly understandable. Aisha and Lilia still lived under the same roof as me, so they'd probably picked up on the fact that something was going on. Their expressions were grave, but they didn't look especially surprised. If I don't come back, I want you to go into my room and...
If you don't come back, why would you even say that?
She did have a point. I'd worked out a nice dramatic line like something out of a story, but why bother with the doomed hero act? Might as well keep a positive attitude. Okay then, when I do come back, let's take a bath together or something.
I don't want to. Take it by yourself.
Ouch. Classic Norn. Aisha.
Yes?
If I don't make it back, I want you to take some of those rice balls you made to Nanahoshi, too.
Oh.
She'll cry with joy, I guarantee it. Once you've given her some of those, she'll do anything you ask her to.
I don't really want to win over Miss Nanahoshi. I'd rather make you spoil me, Rudeus.
Aw, isn't that sweet? What a lovable kid. I'll have to buy her a nice present if I make it back alive. I think she's earned a nice big bag or a diamond ring by now. Lilia?
Yes, Master Rudeus.
Take care of my mother, please.
I certainly will. However...
Yes?
I'll be waiting for your return, Master Rudeus, no matter how long it takes.
Lilia's voice was soft, but firm. We'd known each other for a long time now, but she'd never managed to get any less formal with me. Aisha was definitely my little sister, but it felt like Lilia didn't really consider herself my mother. Hey, Mom, did you hear all that? I've got to go soon, but I'll be back. I thought I could see a hint of sadness on Zenith's face, but it was hard to tell with her. I had to hope that she'd manage to express her emotions more clearly someday. Sylphie.
Yeah?
Take care of Lucy.
Oh. Rudy.
Go on. What is it?
It's nothing. Sorry.
There was something on the tip of Sophie's tongue, but I couldn't guess exactly what it was. I loved her very much, of course, but she wasn't easy to read, and it made me anxious sometimes. I reached out under the table and took her hand in mine, and then, bringing my mouth to her ear, I spoke to her in a whisper. Sylphie?
Yeah?
This might piss you off a little, honestly.
Okay.
But if I make it back, let's get really busy. Sylphie's head jerked forward at this. Maybe I'd taken the wrong approach here?
Good grief. Why are you always so naughty, Rudy?
I took the opportunity to grab her hand and pull her close. It was a sudden, relatively forceful kiss. Sylphie stiffened in surprise, but didn't pull away. She was as cute as heck today, not that she wasn't cute at any given moment. Sylphie was cute by definition. I was going to come back home to her. When I told that to myself, it started to feel true.
Come on, Rudy. Everyone's watching. Yeah.
Just for good measure, I took some time to lick one of her long, pointed ears, pausing to nibble on it gently. By the time I released her, there were visible bite marks on it. Don't worry, I'll come back. Just be patient, okay?
Okay, I'll try my best.
With that, I turned to the last person at the table. Roxy,
Yes, Rudy?
let's sleep together tonight, okay?
But the babies, well, all right.
She hesitated briefly at my offer, but ended up nodding in agreement. That evening, Roxy and I took our bath and headed to my bedroom together, holding hands. Last year, the sort of thing had been enough to get me worked up and raring to go. But under these circumstances, well, there was no way I could get myself in the mood.
All right then. As long as you're gentle,
That's okay, Roxy. I think we should skip that tonight. Roxy had already started to take off her nightgown, but I held up a hand to stop her. She paused, her hand still on her sleeve, and tilted her head quizzically. Come on, have a seat. I gestured to the bed. Once Roxy settled on it, I took a seat in my chair, rather than joining her. I want to give you the details of the situation and explain what might happen if I lose.
Why just me? What about Sylphie? You're willing to trust me and Nanahoshi, but not her.
How do you know I've been talking to Nanahoshi?
It's Sylphie's theory, not mine. We've been talking to each other about the situation for a while now. Is there some reason you don't want Sylphie to know all the details?
That's a good question, actually. Why was I doing this? I wasn't sure. But for some reason I didn't want to tell Sylphie everything. Maybe I didn't want to worry her. No, that wasn't it. But why then? Seriously, why? Was this that destiny thing at work again?
I'm happy you're willing to consult me, of course. But I feel quite bad for her at this point.
Yeah, you're right, Roxy. I'll go get her now.
Glad to hear it.
Roxy was always right, wasn't she? I was so lucky to have her around. I left Roxy in my bedroom for the moment and made my way over to Sylphie's room. As my hand found the doorknob, though, I hesitated for a moment. Now that I thought about it, I'd never looked in on Sylphie on a Roxy night before. What if she was crying herself to sleep in there or something? Sylphie always said that she was okay with me falling in love with other women. She'd welcomed Roxy to the family warmly, and she'd accepted the possibility of Eris joining us as well. But it was possible that she felt very differently deep down inside. What if she was sobbing right now? What if she was hammering little spikes into a voodoo doll, or biting on a lacy handkerchief hissing, "That little hussy," to herself? Nah, it's gonna be fine. Surely my sweet little Sylphie isn't capable of that. Sylphie, can you come to my room for...
He just chomped on my ear just like that. You should have heard the way he murmured, "Let's get really busy." What is he going to do to me? I bet it's going to be that first night all over again. What do I do, Lucy? You might have a little brother or sister on the way soon.
When I opened the door, I found Sylphie rolling around on her bed with her arms wrapped around a pillow, kicking her legs in girlish excitement. She'd been talking fairly softly, but once the door was open, I could hear every word clearly. It was a little hard to believe this girl was already the mother of a child. On the other hand, it was an extremely adorable sight. I was sorely tempted to pounce on her. Fortunately, Lucy wasn't in the room, as she slept in Lilia's bedroom. But then again, this room wasn't soundproof. Gah! Get a hold of yourself. Roxy's waiting for you, remember? Our eyes had met. Sylphie stopped dead in mid-roll with her back on the bed, her butt up against the wall, and her legs stretched up toward the ceiling. A big, creepy grin was frozen on her face. In a gesture of compassion, I closed the door without a word. Everybody does things they wouldn't want anyone to see, right?